Chuck-a-doodle-doo. Oh, Chucky boy's in trouble. Chuck it, Chuck, Chuck, Chuck. Chuck, Chuck, Chucky. Trouble, trouble, trouble. Trouble, trouble, trouble. Let's go.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
Oh, it's getting good, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get ready to rumble. It is Chuck-a-doodle-doo time. Why is Chuck Schumer there? Oh, buddy, not a good day for Chuck Schumer at all. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. I want to give a shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. We have quite a show for you tonight. We have so much to discuss. If you have not been paying attention to what's going on, we do have a bonus story for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen, and that does involve Chuck Schumer. A lot of people are angry with him, and you'll see why. Tonight's theme is things are not what they seem. And I'm pretty sure you'll figure that out as we get into tonight's stories. Really quick, I want to give shout outs to people in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Timothy, says, hey. Greetings, Danny, says, happy birthday, Sabby. Sorry I'm late. Thank you so much, Danny. Shout out to Tiger Brown Tiger, who just became a Sabby member. Let's give Tiger a big whoop, whoop. Hey, hey, hey. Greetings, Brian says, for dim future, see wigs. That's the future they earned, and that's the future they're going to get. Yeah, we're going to get into that tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to DC, says already they flowed Bernie, backstab with Bernie again, then bring in the back door a senile person. Correct. Shout out to Max. Sabby, you should be invited into Piers Morgan at this point. He has podcasters on with fewer subscribers than you. Perhaps he knows that you would mop the floor with him and his panel. I don't know. He tends to bring on people who are public figures. He tends to bring on people that are big Twitter accounts. So that's something that I've noticed. And my Twitter account is not, I'm not a big like Twitter account. So it's just something that I've noticed. Shout out to Tim, says, I'll keep saying Bernie is an op. He's like a carrot dangling from a stick by the Democratic Party. Yo, look at this thing. Universal health care, etc. That you'll never get, but keep voting for Dems. F Bernie. Shout out to CBC Voters, says happy Friday, Sabby Sabs and Eric T. Red. Greetings, Lawrence, says happy Pie Day. Shout out to Lorez, says hi, Sab, Eric, Corey, and RB and fam. Rahm Emanuel, now Pete Buttigieg, Dems are corrupt and never learn. I wish people could see how unserious Dems are. Brian above is right. Dems are the wigs. Oblivion soon. Shout out to Julie K for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Julie K a big whoop, whoop. Yeah. Shout out to Robert. Max, although it's the WWF of intellectual conversation, leftists who are truly experts probably need to go on. Unfortunately, it's a clever show for people who aren't normally aware. Greetings, Brown Bunny, says full moon, Salvati, full-bodied body tease. All right. Shout out to Hannah, says Sabby, I'm ready. Greetings, Bill, says guys, I'm scared of Nancy Pelosi. Ghost. I think you're making fun of Jamal there. Shout out to Mark, says Sabby. Greetings, Eric, says Dasham, LOL. Shout out to Troll, sends a laugh emoji. Greetings, Steve, says hello, everybody. Shout out to Randy. Hello and good evening, Sabby, and all my revolutionary comrades. Shout out to Master Shake. This sounds happening. Greetings, C. Shata, says, hey, Sabby. And shout out to George, says Chuck, Boo Buck. Yes. Shout out to HMM, says, woohoo, I caught a live from the UK to you all. Shout out to the international comrades in the chat. Oh my God, you guys, we have quite a bit to get into. Let me sign in here. Just make sure I'm signed into Tight VNC. We have so much to discuss because I swear to God, I feel like this has really been the craziest week as far as news goes. But the crazy story or ridiculous story was today. If you have not heard about that GOP spending bill and what went down with Chuck Schumer and what Democrats are saying about him and Hakeem Jeffries right now, we're going to get into all of that. So first and foremost, I want to give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate you around here, fam. I'm going to scoot my chair over. I feel like it's stuck in the corner. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators. There's also Sabsters. Don't forget about the ever happy Sabbies, just doing their damn thing and kind of holding the group together there. Of course, we also have members, and all of their names are listed here, ladies and gentlemen. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen on the ticker there. Thank you guys so much. And I'll have to shout out new Sabby patrons on Sundays. I will be live this Sunday, so don't forget about that. Tonight's theme is things are not what they seem, and they are not. And I think you'll see that with every one of these stories. We're going to go ahead and show that thumbnail for you, ladies and gentlemen. And we do have a bonus story as well. Breaking news today. Tonight, we are discussing Breaking Point's Democrat future. You'll see there's Crystal and Saga. They're debating who is going to lead the Democratic Party. What is going to be the future of the Democratic Party? And there is a big disagreement between the two about maybe some of these progressive or populist ideas, and if that actually transfers into votes. That's a discussion that they get into. It comes off of that Gavin Newsom interview that he had with Steve Bannon. We're also going to discuss Jasmine Crockett Challenger. Oh, hey. Hello. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You did not hear that incorrectly. It appears that Jasmine Crockett, who has only been there for such a short time already has a challenger. And he has some things to say about her and the lack of what she's apparently doing for that district. And we're going to dive into who is Jasmine Crockett really and why is she getting so much attention. We'll dive into who she really is, compare it to who you think she is. We're also going to discuss Donald Trump tax cuts for a certain income bracket. This may interest you a bit, but it may not be what you think. We'll get into that story and you'll have to let me know, do you agree about eliminating taxes for a certain income bracket? We're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss news viral fail, news pundit viral fail. Okay, that is Harris Faulkner there from Fox News. She has a viral clip of her that went around on X, and everyone is like, dude, is she serious? So we're going to get into that. That is connected to the protests that were at Trump's tower. We're also going to get into this one. If you haven't seen this, this is crazy. Bernie Sanders runs away. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Bernie Sanders runs away from his own supporters. We're going to get into that. And we also have this breaking news story today, which is the Chuck Schumer fiasco. I called it Chuck-a-doodle-doo. Chuck Schumer is being called to resign by members of his own party. This comes about from that GOP spending bill and Chuck Schumer's vote. We are going to get into all of that, and you'll have to let me know whether or not you agree that Chuck has got to go. So we have quite a show for you guys. If you don't mind, if you can start us off right by smashing that like button, thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. And tonight's theme is things are not what they seem. And we're going to get started with this first story here. When I first heard this news, I said to myself, you know what? That's actually a good idea. But then I had to look a little bit deeper. Just a little bit deeper to see if it was exactly what I thought it was. And I'm going to share that with you here as well. So it appears that Donald Trump has announced a new tax proposal. He is announcing that he is going to eliminate taxes for anyone who makes under $150,000 a year. Now, believe it or not, that's a lot of people, particularly in this country. And of course, that would include people who are under the poverty line as well. Eliminate taxes. But is it really what we think it is? Let's dive into this clip here, ladies and gentlemen, from One. We're giving them some love over at One. We haven't talked about them in a while. Check this out.
U.S. President Donald Trump plans to eliminate tax for those earning less than $150,000 annually, exceeding 1.3 crore rupees. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in an interview said that he is working to make Trump's plan a reality. Lutnick said, and I know what his goal is. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year. That's his goal. That's what I'm working for. Trump has pledged to abolish tip taxes and has pushed for massive tax cuts for people and businesses alike. And Lutnick's remarks on Social Security and tip taxes mirrored those pledges. There are concerns on surging U.S. debt and how tax cuts could weigh further. However, Lutnick asserted that other people, not Americans, would foot the bill. The Commerce Secretary said the United States was losing money due to offshore tax frauds, and if these scams were to halt, the government would have more money to spend on programs like tax cuts for the Americans. Lutnick.
So let me pause here for a second. So think about those offshore accounts, right? Like there are a lot of people who are billionaires. We'll use them as an example, and they have offshore accounts. Now, what does that mean, right? It means that they have accounts that are overseas, and they do this more so that they won't be taxed, right? Like that money is apparently non-existent. It's an offshore account. So according to the IRS, they don't even know it's there, or they don't know that it's there. So they won't be taxed on it, right? So I am in favor of eliminating like this process that happens where billionaires can have the offshore accounts and they're not responsible for that money that they made. Obviously, the rest of us don't get the opportunity to do that. And it's a way that they use to basically cheat the system. That being said, though, there's something that you really need to think about, because if we were to eliminate taxes on everyone who makes under $150,000 a year, again, that's a lot of people. Well, then you have to ask this question. You have to start asking, what exactly do our taxes pay for? I'm going to go ahead and bring this up here from Forbes. You guys got to see this because, again, there's more that goes into this than you realize. So from Forbes, they said that Trump's administration, no taxes under 150K proposal is a disaster. Interesting that this is coming from Forbes, but I guess maybe not. So I'll make this a little bit bigger for you guys so you can see. It says the Trump administration latest tax policy quasi proposal announced by Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is for the elimination of taxes for folks making less than $150,000 per year. Trump's previous major tax initiative, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, slashed the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21% and provided rate reductions across the board. But a closer examination reveals who really won with the new policies: corporations and the wealthy. I also want to remind you, if we go back to 2017, don't forget that some of these corporations didn't pay any taxes, right? So like Netflix and Amazon didn't pay any taxes during that time. High income earners benefited massively, with the top 1% seeing a 2.2% increase after tax income, while all other taxpayers got some short-term relief in the form of a larger standard reduction. But we're also hit by state and local tax, SALT, deduction caps. If along with extending TCJA, tax cuts that disproportionately benefit high income earners, the Trump administration intends to eliminate the income tax for individuals making less than $150,000. It raises the obvious question of who will be left shouldering the tax burden. The answer is either the middle class or no one, because Social Security and Medicare will be shut down. Okay, so here's a portion of truth from Forbes, right? Which is that when we talk about eliminating taxes for people who make under $150,000, again, that's a lot of people in this country. But what do our taxes pay for? So some of those taxes go towards Social Security and Medicare. So if you have a giant chunk of the American population no longer paying these income taxes, these payroll taxes, then that would ultimately have an effect on Social Security and Medicare. But to that, I say there should be a workaround, right? Because the reality is you really don't have to use American taxpayer money to fund Social Security and Medicare. I'll get into that in just a second. We're going a little bit more here. The illusion of a tax-free system for the working class. At first glance here, Lutnick's proposal to eliminate taxes for those earning under 150K sounds like a windfall for working taxpayers. However, as with most tax policy promises, the devil is in the details. Dun, dun, dun. It is worth noting that most Americans in this income range pay more in payroll taxes than income taxes. Payroll taxes fund Social Security and Medicare. When Lutnick speaks of eliminating taxes on individuals making less than 150K, one must assume then that this includes both income taxes and payroll taxes, as the latter is the larger burden on individuals in that income range. It would make little sense to assume in his broad pronouncement of elimination of taxes, he means only the lesser burden of federal income tax. Listen to this part. You can't fund Social Security and Medicare without taxpayers. If the Trump administration truly intends to eliminate both income and payroll taxes for that bracket, we will be facing existential crisis for the programs that working and retired Americans rely on. And this is where I have to push back. The reality is you don't have to fund Social Security and Medicare through taxpayer dollars. This is something that the federal government could just pay for like they pay for other things. And I'll give you an example. For those of us that came from the military or military families, like my family was in the military, the federal government pays for a lot, right? For those of us that attended schools overseas, the Dodd schools, who do you think funds those schools? It's not, the taxpayers like it is in the United States, where property taxes help with school funding here in the US. That's not the way it works with the Dodd schools. The Dodd schools overseas are funded by the federal government. And those schools in particular are actually pretty decent schools. Like I went to Dodd school and I went to public school here in the United States, and there is a difference. When I was at the Dodd schools, I didn't have to pay to participate in activities in school. I didn't have to pay to be in the band. I didn't have to pay to play on the basketball team. Everything was paid for. Actually, the only thing I had to pay for was the reed for my clarinet. That's it. The federal government pays for all of that. So one of the things that I've argued before is the same way the federal government can fund those Dodd schools is the same way the federal government can fund these public schools. And you can do that by also cutting that large defense budget. I've talked about this a number of times. So I do have to push back a little bit there. The system as it exists right now, yes, that makes sense. Like I get what they're saying, but they're not talking about changing the system. That's a big part of the problem here. Social Security and Medicare are funded almost entirely through payroll taxes. If you eliminate them for the vast majority of workers, you're not reforming these programs. You're eliminating them entirely. So I want to bring up another example, okay? Remember during the pandemic, when several states in this country were locked down and there were a number of businesses that closed. I'll use my state, for example, and some of those businesses just went completely, out of business because they couldn't afford. Okay. So the point I'm saying is this: there were a number of people in this country during the pandemic that were not receiving a paycheck during that point in time. Thus, they weren't paying into the system during that point in time. But those programs still continued. How were those programs able to continue? The federal government jumped in. See, these are some of the things that people disagree. They just, I don't say disagree, but they forget about. During that time, during the pandemic, when a number of people weren't working and people lost their jobs or people were not getting paid, who stepped in to make sure that those programs would continue? That was the federal government at that time. Don't forget about the American Rescue Act, right? Don't forget about the child tax credit, even though these things were eliminated later on, like the child tax credit, et cetera. What it showed you during that time is that if the federal government really wants to step in and help the people, they can, right? So just remember that. It goes on to say here in 2023, payroll taxes generated $1.23 million, accounting for roughly 90% of Social Security's revenue and a significant portion of Medicare's funding. The entire system is predicated on there being workers paying in so that retirees and the disabled can get paid out. Benefits do not continue in the absence of ongoing payroll taxes. That's false, though. Let me highlight this here. It's like the example I just gave you. During the pandemic, when some people were not working and they lost their jobs, these programs still continued because the federal government jumped in. Put differently, if you exempt enough income brackets from payroll taxes, you functionally deprive these programs of funding entirely. Again, they're not giving you the whole story, but that's why you have me. Because you see, this is the problem, what they have here with this statement. The entire system is predicated on there being workers paying in so that retirees and the disabled can get paid out. What happens if you don't have any workers? So I would say the problem is that the system itself is inherently flawed. What would happen if we had another pandemic where the entire country had to shut down? What would happen? The federal government would have to step in. So that's a big part of the problem. But I want you to think about it from this perspective as well, because like I said, things are not what they seem. The reality is, and shout out to my producer, Eric, for this, we really need to ask who pays when it comes to taxes. Thank you for this, Eric. This is from his Substack here. So if you check out this chart here, this is what you'll see. 400 richest Americans bottom half of income earners. So you can see this here, right? Trump has floated the idea of eliminating individual income taxes. This idea avoids a crucial aspect. What's most important is not the type or the amount of tax. What's most important is who is paying. Is it targeting the 99% who work for a living or the top 0.1%? In the graph above, we can see how the tax burden has shifted from 1960 to 2018, and it's a safe bet that the trend continues this present day. Yeah, so you can see this here. You can see how things have changed. If we go back to 1960, at that point in time, the people who were paying the most taxes were the richest Americans. But as we get closer and closer to 2020, as we're going down the timeline here, you can see that gap really significantly starts to close. So now we have 24% in 2018 and 23% there. So as you can see, we're paying a lot. And by we, I mean the working class, right? So this part here, which brings up a good point, this leads to a key question. What are taxes for? The purpose of taxes is to circulate money back out of the economy. How they are applied, who is doing the paying, is a key driver of wealth inequality. When the tax burden is shifted from the billionaires to the working class, wealth inequality increases. And this is what we've seen on steroids. So what do we do about it? We need to start thinking bigger. Rather than being distracted by the latest partisan theater over this or tax that, we should be demanding radical changes in the tax system, changes that would transform it from a driver of wealth inequality into a tool for fixing it. And if we shout out 11 demands, this is one of the demands. Revamp taxation and funding. Abolish all taxes except for highly progressive income tax, wealth tax, and taxes on large corporations. Use the tax system as a tool to address wealth inequality. Eliminate tax loopholes. Prosecute and potentially expel persons and corporations that abuse offshore tax havens. Charter a network of state-level public banks to benefit local communities and businesses. Issue federal currency to promote the public good, not increase private profits. It doesn't have to be this way. It starts with real demands. So to Eric's point, people have to start thinking bigger instead of just focusing on that one single issue, because this really isn't just about let's eliminate taxes for those who make under 150K. It's really about who's paying these taxes, who's paying the most, and then you can connect that to wealth inequality in this country. The reality is people who are lower income shouldn't be paying as much taxes as they're paying, and billionaires shouldn't be able to pay zero taxes or hardly any taxes. But that's what's been happening. And that's why we have massive wealth inequality in this country. So whether or not you agree with this tax proposal is kind of besides the point. The real question is, who will truly benefit? If you know someone that lives in a state where there are no income taxes, a friend of mine lives in Tennessee, no income taxes there, the state has found other ways to make them pay for other things, right? So they may not have income taxes, but they may have higher taxes elsewhere. Typically, a lot of times that's how it works. So what we have to ask ourselves again is who's really paying, who's paying the most, and how can we revamp the system? As I told you before, there are many opportunities where the federal government has stepped in, and we really don't have to use income taxes to pay for Social Security and Medicare. This can all be funded by the federal government. We have to think bigger. All right, guys, let's go to some of the comments here. Mike says, Sabby Sabs, we love you in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Oh, what's up, Western Mass? Hello. Hey, Pittsfield out there. Sunlight. Eric, oh, the mutual aid workshop still happening. Yes, it will happen this month, not this Saturday, tomorrow, but the next Saturday. And I'm going to make the flyer and everything for that to let you guys know about that. And I'll announce it. Should be announcing that Sunday's live stream, and I'll put it in my newsletter. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you. I do. Thank you. I didn't do much today. Someone said, Sabby looks great. Thank you. I wasn't feeling kind of great. I wasn't feeling too great today. I was kind of sluggish. But thank you. The Salt Laker says we are all slaves on the plantation. Yeah, I mean, like, this is a big part of it. I think we really have to start teaching people how to look at things from a bigger lens, right? Looking at things from a bigger lens. And I think you'll see that with this next story because it is craziness out here in these streets. Okay. All right, guys, if you haven't had a chance to do so, smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And we have a bonus story that I'm going to jump into. This is breaking news today, ladies and gentlemen. Chuck Schumer is not having a good week. There are Democrats right now calling for Chuck Schumer to resign. They want Chuck out. And it looks like Hakeem Jeffries will not be far behind him because they're calling for him to get out of the way too. Now, why is this happening? I made this picture here. I'm sorry. I thought it was kind of funny. I called it Chuck-a-doodle-doo because that's really what it is. I feel like right now, Chuck Schumer is just like a rooster, right? And he's just like, Chuck-a-doodle-doo, just following a beck and a call. And that is about the GOP spending bill. Now, I told you before that things are not what they seem. While most Democrats refuse to support the GOP spending bill, Chuck Schumer, who is obviously in the Senate and the leader in the Senate for the Democrats, decided that he would vote for the GOP spending bill. This is Trump's bill that Trump wanted to get passed. And I ask this question to you and all of you folks. Chuck Schumer and many alike have continued to say that Donald Trump is Hitler and all these other things. The question that I pose, if this is all true, why are you supporting his spending bill, which Democrats have said this is going to hurt working class people? Why? Because it's one big party. Now, before that vote took place, AOC did make an appearance here on CNN. I want you to hear what she had to say about what Chuck Schumer was about to do.
What do you think of the job Democratic leaders are doing, not just Senate Democratic leaders, but also Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, your fellow New Yorker, in terms of standing up to Trump?
Well, when we look at this vote around this government funding bill that we saw this week, Leader Hakeem Jeffries was able to keep the entire House Democratic caucus united and together.
Except for Terry Golden.
Right.
Except
Every single House Democrat, including every single House Democrat who won a Trump district, except for one out of over 200, voted against this deeply partisan, extreme Republican spending bill. Not just because they're Democrats, but because they know it's bad for the country. This bill is bad for the country. And so I think that in terms of Democratic leadership in the House, we've seen that result in the House. I think it's time that we see similar results in the Senate.
Would you, what do you think of the job that Chuck Schumer is doing? Would you ever challenge him, do you think?
I think that what we need right now is a united Senate Democratic caucus that can stand up for this country and not vote for cloture and not vote for this bill. And I think that the strength that we have is in this moment. Reconciliation and all of these, Republicans do not need Democratic votes for that. They need it for this. And so the strength of our leadership in this moment is going to demonstrate the strength of our caucus. And I cannot urge enough how bad of an idea it is to empower and enable Donald Trump and Elon Musk in this moment. It is dangerous and it is reckless.
Well, you just talked about...
Pause. I just want to point out what she just did. He asked her, like, specifically, would you ever challenge Chuck Schumer? She didn't answer the question. Okay. So as much as AOC is trying to look like she's trying to be a fighter right now, she's really trying to maintain, you know, the partisan politics. She's really trying to continue to be a part of that club. Because the question was, would you challenge Chuck Schumer? She didn't want to say yes or no, because she still wants to be a part of the club. This is something that I want people to pay close attention to. There are a number of people right now, after Chuck Schumer's vote, that are asking AOC publicly to run against Chuck Schumer and get his seat. But she won't even answer the question about whether or not she's willing to challenge him, because the reality is she's not willing to challenge him. These are what we call fake fighters, right? You know how we got here? We got here because the squad, and at the time that had a narrow majority, chose not to use that narrow majority to get any type of leverage from the corporate Democrats, the Dem leadership at that point in time. That's how we got here. And because they did not do that, they really didn't get any type of progressive policies or anything that they could have gotten for the working class people, because they decided not to force the vote on Medicare for all. It didn't even have to be Medicare for all. It could have been anything. They decided not to force the vote, not to use their leverage. So then what happens a couple of years later? The Freedom Caucus in the Republican Party decides, oh, hey, that was a strategy. Maybe we could use that. They decide to use that strategy, to actually do that strategy against Kevin McCarthy for Speaker. It was really a slap in the face to the squad, but apparently they didn't see it that way. They were just like, oh my God, the Republican Party is a mess. You see all this fighting going on? But that's what you guys were supposed to do. That was the assignment of Justice Democrats, to go into the Democratic Party and have a hostile takeover of that party. Once they got in, they decided that they want to get along and they want to be political careerists. So that never happened. So I don't want you to be fooled by all of this hoopla right now of people saying, AOC, you should challenge Chuck Schumer for his seat. She's not going to do that because she still wants to continue to be a part of the club. Also, there is a risk that she could lose and you're just out of there. And now you got no House seat and you damn sure don't have a Senate seat. You know what I'm saying? Let's continue on.
But the strength of your leadership, Chuck Schumer just said that he's going to vote for cloture. Not only the Democrats can do it, but he's going to participate in it. Does that mean that you think he's a weak Senate leader?
I think that would be a mistake. But we have time between now and tomorrow, and I hope that individuals that are considering that reconsider it. I genuinely do. I don't think it's what New Yorkers want. I don't think it's what the country wants. This is genuinely not about Democrats or Republicans. This is about deep cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. This is about the evisceration of the federal government. This is about codifying the looting that is happening at the behest of Elon Musk in order to pay for his tax breaks for billionaires. And we have a responsibility to stand up for it. That is why people elected us, and that is our responsibility to them right now.
So again, she didn't answer his other question, and he was asking her if she believes that Chuck Schumer is weak. And she wouldn't answer that question because she don't really want to fight either. Does everybody see the problem with the Democratic Party? And I hate to do the I told you so thing, but I was telling Eric about this earlier before we even went live. This is one of those perfect we told you so moments about the Democratic Party. The number of people who called me names, shamed me, wagged their finger at me, called me a right winger, even though I was voting for Jill Stein. The number of people who came after me in 2024 because I refused to settle for a candidate that had no progressive agenda, a candidate that would not commit to not giving, Israel weapons to continue a genocide, a candidate that, according to Biden, very much so was in the room in agreement with all of these policymaking decisions, a candidate who called themselves a Zionist and said they heavily and always support Israel. I was shamed for not wanting to support that candidate. And I was told that it was more important to do so that you don't get Donald Trump. First of all, I live in Massachusetts. So second of all, I knew that this is where things were headed. The problem that you ran into with the squad not using that narrow majority that they had at that point in time is that now they don't get to use it because now they don't have a narrow majority. You have to use it when you have it. And now there's nothing they can do. They can go on to CNN and complain and say, Chuck Schumer, please do not vote for this bill. But at the end of the day, if Chuck Schumer votes for it, what are they going to do? They're not going to leave the party. They're not going to, she wouldn't even call him weak. She wouldn't even tell you if she's willing to challenge him. They're not really going to stand up to anything. We knew this when they weren't willing to stand up against the genocide. We knew this when AOC came after Jill Stein, who was against the genocide, who had solidarity with the Palestinian people, who had an actual progressive platform, part of her campaign, which included reparations, by the way. That's who AOC chose to attack instead of attacking the candidate who was still willing to give Israel the weapons, the candidate who did not have a progressive agenda. So these people are not fighters. And because they did not fight, this is how you get this. Ken Klippenstein says, breaking, enough Senate Democrats voted with Republicans to advance their funding bill, including the following 10. So if any of these senators here are your senators, you might want to jot this down. Catherine Cortez Masto, Dick Durbin, John Fetterman, Kirsten Gillibrand, Maggie Hassan, Angus King, Gary Peters, Brian Schatz, Chuck Schumer, and Jean Shaheen. Chuck Schumer's the big one that people are attacking because he is the leader for the Democrats in the Senate. But I want you to look at these names. First and foremost, I just want to remind everybody, I was shamed and name called and dragged through the mud for warning people a couple of years ago when John Fetterman decided to run for Senate that he was not a progressive. He did not support these progressive policies and that he was horrible on Israel. He was endorsed by Hillary Clinton. I don't understand why the bells and whistles didn't go off for people, right? They said, no, you got to support him. He's a progressive. Now some of those same people are now saying, oh my God, this guy's pathetic. If you would have looked through his background and did your research like I did, you would have seen how John Fetterman really was and where he stood on the issues. But they thought he was progressive and cool because he wore a hoodie. So you got John Fetterman and Chuck Schumer voting for the GOP bill. The Democratic Party, they're not fighters. The Democratic Party has no backbone. The Democratic Party caved in because they're doing what their donors want them to do. It was not just Chuck Schumer's name on this list. There were 10 of them. And I think if you look them up on Open Secrets, you can see where they're getting a lot of their money from. The same people who stood there and told you that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy, that Donald Trump was Hitler, he was a danger to society, have no problem passing Donald Trump's agenda. And yet people came after me. One corporate party. And that's what people fully have to understand. And just to show you how much Trump appreciated this, of course, he made a statement. This is Qasim Rashid says, when every Democrat and independent is condemning your poor judgment and the fascist in the White House is praising your poor judgment, you deserve to be fired from your job as Senate leader and be forced out of the Senate altogether. So people are coming after Chuck Schumer now. He says, Schumer, resign. There is a call for Chuck Schumer to step down. And here is the message from Donald Trump. Congratulations to Chuck Schumer for doing the right thing. Took guts and courage. The big tax cuts, LA fire fix, debt ceiling bill, and so much more is coming. We should all work together on that very dangerous situation. A non-pass would be a country destroyer. Approval will lead us to new heights. Again, really good and smart move by Senator Schumer. This could lead to something big for the USA, a whole new direction and beginning. That's the statement there from Donald Trump. And so, as I said, now you have Chuck Schumer and those 9 other Democrats doing the bidding of Donald Trump. Don't forget, when Joe Biden was in office, you didn't see the Republicans move that way. So the Democratic Party is not together. And what we have seen more and more is that Dem leadership is willing to move towards the right or further towards the right because that appeases their donors, that appeases Wall Street, that appeases the military industrial complex. They're willing to do that instead of move to the left and support a populist working class agenda that can help everyday average Americans. Bernie Sanders is running around the U.S. right now, doing all these rallies, talking about we're out there fighting against the oligarchy. You look kind of foolish. when 10 members of your own party is supporting what Donald Trump and Elon Musk want? They're billionaires. So how do you go to these rooms and you speak and say, we have to fight back against the billionaire interest on the right when your party is also consumed by billionaire interests? It's a game. These people never meant to act for the working class people. And there's such division right now that even Ro Khanna is calling out Chuck Schumer. There's a lot of tension going on online, you guys. I know some of you are not on X, so I got to bring it to you. There's a lot of tension. Ro Khanna said when the Senate minority leader sells you out, the only option is to take back the party and country with grassroots activists in blue and red districts to stand up for the Constitution and our democracy. So you see, this is exactly what my comrade Nick from RBN explained to Ro Khanna to his face. This is exactly what I said to Ro Khanna about 2.5 years ago. This party is not moving in the direction for the working class. It moved away from that, I would say, back during the Bill Clinton days. He goes on to say, right here, the problem with Schumer's action, like Lucy pulling the football away every time before Charlie Brown kicks it, is it makes all congressional Dems look feckless and undermines trust, as if the fix is in, as if we're just acting. That's why we need to call this out. Sounds like Ro Khanna's been watching independent media. They are actors. They are actors. It is an act. It is fake. Because the reality is, when you have the opportunity, when you have the moment to stand up to the oligarchy, to stand up to the billionaire class, you too, Ro Khanna, have caved in. You sat right there a year ago and told people to support Joe Biden when he can hardly keep an eye open or speak straight. Then you switched over and told people to support Kamala Harris while she was getting all this billionaire money. Now you want to speak out against billionaires because Donald Trump is a billionaire. He's in office and he's working with Elon Musk. All of you are complicit. All of you are complicit. It's easy to point at Chuck Schumer right now because he's the Senate minority leader. But at the end of the day, when you guys had the opportunity to stand up, you decided to sit down because you wanted to continue to have your career. That's what you would have done. That's why all of you are complicit. All of you are complicit, like Ro Khanna, when you sat up there and you decided to tell people to vote for Joe Biden when you knew damn well he did not have a working class agenda. You can even see it here. Shout out to Power to the People. Chuck Schumer failed on purpose. He gave Trump and the GOP everything they want because it is what he and his party and his donors want too. The Democrats are con artists who pretend to serve the people when in reality, they serve the oligarchy too. We need a new party and a new system. And thank you so much for sharing this, Power to the People. As you can see it here, it says Schumer, the art of the fail. I guess it's supposed to be kind of similar to the art of the deal. Enough is enough. American Civil Liberties Union. These are all the people coming after him. A stunning display of moral and political cowardice. That's from Democracy of America. They got less than nothing. It's baffling. That's from Indivisible. Fury is from MoveOn.org. Democrats cave from Think Progress. Why people don't believe the Democratic Party stands for anything. That's from Progressive Change Campaign Committee. Tears of disappointment and anger. That's from America's Voice. It's official. Chuck Schumer is the worst negotiator in Washington. And that is from Credo. And to that, I say this. I've been telling you guys for the longest time, some of these people got to go. Okay? Chuck, and I know, friend of the show, Roger Meadows, has attended meetings that Chuck Schumer hosted, one in particular where he admitted that the government can't afford to pay for Medicare for all. Chuck knows the game. Chuck knows. Chuck has got to go. Just like I told you Hakeem Jeffries needs to go, Hakeem Jeffries also got to go. These are not leaders. Leaders lead. Leaders don't follow. You sat right there and followed what Trump wanted you to do for the GOP spending bill. How is that leading? I made a whole video about Hakeem Jeffries telling you where he came from, how he changed, the money that he took to get there, his alignment with the Israeli lobby, and the people he was willing to screw over in his own community to get that seat. Now, they wanted Hakeem Jeffries in there because he was going to fight for Israel. So he got in. Charles Barron, who was actually a real fighter in the community for the people, he should have been in that seat. Charles Barron wouldn't stand for this, but that's why he's not there. So there's Chuck Schumer just bowing out. So when you make these statements that Donald Trump is Hitler and, oh my God, he's making the country crazy and all those types of statements, and then you go along with what Donald Trump wants you to do, why would you go along with someone if they're Hitler? If there are all these things that you say, all of these things that you say, why would you go along with them? And then this one really just took the cake. I couldn't believe someone actually said this. This is from Jack Cocciarella. He's a doozy, right? So we're starting a Democratic Tea Party, right? I'm going to say this again, guys. This guy literally said tonight, or last night, we're starting a Democratic Tea Party, right? There was a Democratic Tea Party. It was called Justice Democrats. And through all in all, what we thought was a good idea at that point in time, there were a number of pundits that said, just go along with the corporate Democrats. Don't fight them. Don't fight back against them. Just vote for the Democrat. Who cares if they're progressive or not? Now, all of a sudden, people have forgotten this. Now, all of a sudden, Jack don't remember. Boop, gone. There was a left Tea Party called Justice Democrats. They went into the Democratic Party, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, etc. And they ended up going along with Dem leadership. They caved to Dem leadership because it turns out, contrary to what AOC said when she said she didn't care if she would be a first-time congressperson, it turns out that wasn't true. And when some of us tried to hold them accountable, we were called all kinds of names. When I told you that this day was coming, that if they did not use their narrow majority while they had it, this is what you would get. That if you can't get any concessions for someone who's running for Speaker of the House, you don't fucking vote for them. And now you don't have a narrow majority, and now there's nothing you can do. So what happens? The party is going to move further and further to the right. This is what I've been trying to tell people. Sorry if I get a little frustrated. It's just, this is so annoying to me because I tried to explain this is what's going to happen if you don't hold Dem leadership accountable. But according to Jamal Bowman, they were afraid of Nancy Pelosi, which tells me again, they were just looking for a political career. Even Zaina here, Zaina, who worked with Justice Democrats back in the day when AOC was running, if the neolibs are switching gears, they need to hear. We tried this. I advised 100 insurgent federal races as they were blocked and demonized by Dem establishment. The Dem party even protected GOP Senate incumbents over people like Paula Jean Swearengin and Betsy Sweet. Listen to the lessons we learned and have some humility. Zaina's right, and not to mention this as well. Don't forget that even some of these progressive organizations at the end of the day, instead of endorsing those Justice Democrats, they decided to endorse the corporate Democrat candidate. This happened to a number of people who ran through Working Families Party, where instead of endorsing the progressive candidate from Justice Democrats, these people were endorsing the corporate Democrat. They all bought in. Now, what's the problem with this bill? Let's go into this because some people are probably wondering, what's the big deal? I'm going to show you both sides because that's what we do on the show. I'll show you what the Republicans say are in the bill, and I'll show you what the Democrats say are in the bill. So let's get into it here. The Republicans say this, that there's $13 billion decrease in non-defense spending, which Republicans are touting as $13 billion in savings would stem from the removal of projects or one-time initiatives funded by lawmakers known as earmarks in fiscal year 2024, according to a House Appropriations Committee spokesperson. Okay, so it goes on to say that this measure would not affect money directed to these projects in the last fiscal year, but it would not repeat the funding for the same projects. It also says, again, this is what the Republicans are saying is in the bill. They said that there's a stopgap measure and that this would support federal wildland firefighters, including raising their pay and providing premium pay for those responding to fires. It would increase funding for air traffic control systems by $753 million, funding for nutrition assistance to mothers, infants, and children in the WIC program. They said this would jump more by $500 million to a total of $7.6 billion, a request made by the Trump administration. It also says they're going to increase funding for the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, which supports low-income senior citizens. The bill includes a provision that effectively neuters lawmakers' powers to force a vote on whether they terminate a president's ability to impose tariffs. So hold on to that part. Now, here's what the Democrats say are in the bill, because you're going to see two different things. Two different things, okay? Okay, so the Democrats are saying that this creates slush funds for the Trump administration to reshape spending priorities, eliminate long-standing programs, pick winners and losers, and more. It goes on to say that they're highlighting lawmakers said that a variety of spending cuts contained in the continued resolution, including slicing $185 million for defense nuclear non-proliferation programs, slashing $1.4 billion from the Army Corps of Engineers construction funding used to projects to mitigate the impacts of hurricanes and floods. It also says they are reducing the support for rural broadband community connect program by $30 million. That would affect people. If you're in a rural area and you kind of relying on, you need broadband, this would be an issue. Cut nearly $800 million from veteran affairs facility construction, eliminate up to $40 million in election security grant funding, and trim assistance to farmers to improve their lands and participate in conservation activities by $30 million. It says the package would not provide additional funds for FEMA disaster relief fund, which they will need more money before the end of the fiscal year. The bill will limit DC spending to its fiscal year 2024 level for the rest of the year. And of course, it goes on to say that DC Mayor Bowser and other district officials warned at a press conference on Monday that the district would have slashed $1.1 billion of its approved budget if this bill passes. These cuts could strip funding away from public safety, education, and economic growth priorities. Now, Colin from Indie News Network is a teacher in DC, and Colin is kind of on standby waiting to see if he's going to be impacted. So obviously, as you can see, both parties are saying two completely different things about this bill. So it's probably a mixture of both. Either way, what stands true is that the Democratic Party is divided. So while all these years, while Biden was in office, while they appeared to pretend like they were together, things are not what they seem. They weren't really together. They are divided and even more divided now. And you would think that since Trump is in office, the Democratic Party would be more together. They would have a better coalition. Their coalition would be stronger, but that's not what we're seeing. What I have been seeing since Donald Trump came into the White House, it seems very clear to me that the Democratic Party, the Democrat politicians in Congress, are further apart from each other now than they were under Biden. And I don't really know what that means, but I can say this. What it shows you, this vote by Chuck Schumer, it shows you that once again, Dem leadership is more willing to cave to the Republican Party than they are to cave to progressive policies within their own party. And that's going to be a problem. Now, why do I say this? I say this because of this. Everything that you are seeing happening right now, all of this division is a furthermore reason to support third parties. It is a furthermore reason that we need more third party action in this country. That we need to make it so that corporate media, and of course the Democratic Party, they spend all this money to fight against the Green Party. But the people who choose to remain in the Democratic Party but agree with the Green Party policies, you might be part of the problem. Why are you staying with this party that doesn't even serve you? Why? And people say, oh, because Donald Trump. Dem leadership is supporting Donald Trump, man. These people are not leaders. They're cavers. And they would rather try to work with the right than work with those who consider themselves to be progressives. Because at the end of the day, both party leadership despises the left agenda. If there was ever a time to push for people to go towards third parties, now is that time. I said the same thing during, the genocide, but I say it again now because this ain't working. This isn't working. And I hope people are seeing what this shows, that these squad members are now lack there of a squad. They're not getting any gains in this party. None of these progressive policies have passed on the national level. They've passed through the states. And that's kind of where people need to really redirect their attention. If you want things to pass like that, you kind of need to look at the states. But they haven't passed on the national level. There is no growth, no wins for a progressive agenda through the Democratic Party. Time to get out if you hadn't. Let's go to some of the comments here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey. Thank you, Cynthia. Hey, pretty lady. Thank you so much for covering the story on how Democrats treated the grassroots social media platforms. It was distasteful and so embarrassing. I love you dearly. Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you, Courtney. Good evening, Sabby. How much would a woodchuck chuck if a wood could chuck wood without caving like Chuck did? It's an interesting question. Oh my God. Everybody's mad at Chuck right now. Beyond Ebony says, didn't Trump just call Chuck Schumer a Palestinian? That's right. I forgot about that. Yes. But you see what's happening, right? You see who he goes to say yes to. Exalamas, yay, they are working successfully as a team. Thank you, Marriage, Politics, and Sports. So Sabby would rather have a shutdown. By the way, no shade. I like your content. Don't agree all the time, but you are good at what you do. Yeah, I mean, we've had government shutdowns multiple times before. The shutdown wouldn't last as long. I mean, a shutdown is just a threat for you to cave to what, that side wants. That's what the shutdown is it's like a threat for you to cave to. I would argue, even if that wasn't the case, I still would argue Chuck Schumer still would have supported Donald Trump. Chuck Schumer's a wuss. Thank you, Jay. Dick Durbin, Illinois, will go on TV soon and rant against Trump. He is disgusting, pathetic, and must be primaried. He's not my senator. Thank you, Gamble. They got a lot of clever shit to say post-vote. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. DC is just Hollywood for oogly people. Paul Begel. I've heard that before. Shout out to Lauren L for gifting 10 Sabby memberships. Thank you, Lauren. That's very generous of you. And we got another one. Shout out to Blueser who just gifted 50 Sabby memberships. Holy crap. You guys are giving out a lot of memberships tonight. And thank you, Joey Peltier. F the electoral politics until after the general strike in 2028. Donations and volunteer time needs to go towards localized mutual aid and organizing. Yes. And I'll have to talk about this on Sunday. I saw that there seems to be a general strike movement in the works. So hopefully I can talk a little bit about that on Monday. It appears Chris Smalls is involved in this. Let's get that comment on Rumbo. Rum to the rum. Thank you, Goo. Did she even do anything for her district other than using their tax dollars to buy a Tesla and tax the rich, expensive outfit at elitist Met Gala? She did mutual aid. She does mutual aid for her district. I have seen that. Thank you, Roger. Tough luck, Chuck. Not up for re-election till 2028. Dr. Fidel Kaboob lessons. Sab, rich people no longer have to offshore their accounts. They can use SD, which offers the most tax benefits in the U.S. You can even shield your taxes from the federal government as well as divorcee lawyers. All focus on New York, AOC, Chuck, Jeffries, Trump, plus special elections coming up to determine who will control the U.S. House. And thank you for this one. Everyone forgets that Chuck helped McConnell fast track Trump's judges on his first term as president. Please let me know when you clip this. I got friends who think that both parties are not the same. I keep telling them Democrats are worse because they enable Republicans. When you get ready to do a deep dive on South Dakota, I got the file ready. 2024 BIs are done. Thank you. Start when ready. Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Sabby, for the coverage, the 411 tonight. You are welcome. So the Chuck Schumer clip, this one will post tomorrow. So Saturday, depending on when people see this. Yeah. So that'll be there Saturday for you. All right, guys. We are moving on to our next story. Again, the theme tonight is things are not what they seem. And that is also the case when it comes to Miss Jasmine Crockett. You see, Jasmine Crockett kind of came out of nowhere, right? And now she's just everywhere, whether it's CNN, MSNBC. She seems to have become very popular in a short amount of time. I want to remind everyone how she got to that spot. You see, it was during this particular hearing where she made a comment about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and this is what made her go viral. Just a reminder.
For 4 minutes and 21 seconds.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Who's
It's me.
Ms. Crockett?
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's a
Hold on.
part
I'm
of
trying
it.
to find clarification on what quality.
Chairman, motion to strike
I
those
had no idea
words.
what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just
You just voted to do
Y'all did it
it.
first,
so you don't
just
voted to do it.
Order.
I'm trying to get clarification.
Look at calm down.
No, because this
I
is
would
what
like to
y'all
get
do.
through proceedings.
So I'm trying
Hey,
to get
Ms.
clarification.
Crockett, you're not
Y'all wanna
recognized.
play
Ms.
games.
I can't hear
Crockett.
you with your
And
yelling.
you don't want
Calm
me to
down.
Be,
Can
no,
you please calm
don't
down?
tell me to calm down.
Calm down.
Because y'all
Please
talk
calm
noise,
down.
and then you
You're
can't
out of
take
control.
Because if I
Look,
come,
Chairman,
if I
can
come
we
and
send her
talk
outside to
shit
take a
about
break
her,
for 5
y'all
minutes?
gonna have a problem.
Mr.
Order.
Chairman.
So when I first saw this, I even said it back then. I hope people realize this is an act, right? This is an act. That's not who Jasmine Crockett is. This is how she was able to get on the map. This is how she was on everyone's radar after this outburst in a hearing, right? And so she kind of she'll come in and bring in like the sister girl, like yo, like that kind of attitude or whatever to get a lot of attention. It's not professional. People can say whatever you want about me, but that's not professional. There's a time and place for everything. And it's not cute. But that was her way of getting herself on the map. So from that moment, she went on to make all these different appearances. She went on all these different shows after that. And they were like, you called Marjorie Taylor Greene butch, blonde, bad body, da 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 da. First of all, it was really interesting that so many Democrats were praising that, because from what I remember, the term butch is a slur. So it's funny. It's interesting to me. The same people who claim to, care about LGBTQ or whatever, they were applauding and cheering on Jasmine Crockett, even though she used a slur that's used against the LGBTQ community. This is how you know people are full of shit. So she got a lot of attention there, and she's been getting attention since. And then, of course, she decides to put out this dancing video because this is really what she want to do, right? Jasmine Crockett really want to do this kind of stuff. So she put out this video to Kendrick Lamar's song.
Oh no! It's a cultural divide. I'ma get it on the floor. You really about to do it? 40 acres in the mule. This is bigger than the music. You really about to do it? Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence. They get on it like that. Hey, I'm tripping, I'm sliding, I'm riding through the back like fuck. Must have on a beat, bro, deep boat in the rap. He a freak though, man down, call like Amber Lambs. Tell him breathe, let them boys to the cross, they walk around like G's.
So we talked about this before when it happened as well. Jasmine Crockett wants to be seen. This is what Jasmine is there to act a damn fool. And here's another thing. It would be different if you were behaving this way and you were actually winning. I don't know, like passing some legislation, shit like that. Because in order to be an effective member of Congress, you actually have to pass legislation. Maybe go in there and write some damn bills. I don't know. How about do your damn job? Things like that. This is an act. Look at me, guys. I'm like you. I'm dancing with Kendrick. I'm down. I'm down with the homies. I haven't seen this before. But you think this really who she is, right? Because see, while you're paying attention to this, you're paying attention to the entertainment. Oh, Jasmine was out there dancing. Whoa. Oh, Jasmine called MTG a butch blonde. Da, 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 da. This is the same trick that has been used against Black people for years. Focus on entertainment and don't focus on legislation. Don't focus on these laws that are being passed. Don't focus on where they're getting their money from. Don't focus on who they're in bed with politically. Jasmine Crockett supports Israel, by the way. Someone who was a civil rights attorney, I find it kind of strange that you're supporting the oppressor. But they don't want to talk about that. They don't want you to focus on that. They don't want you to talk about that because they want you to just look at her dance. That's a distraction. As we go on, we will see. I showed you this because Jasmine Crockett has not been there long. And Jasmine Crockett already has a challenger. There is a gentleman who has announced that he is challenging Jasmine Crockett. He is running against her, and he claims that she is not doing anything for their district. Let's go ahead and bring up this clip here. He is a Republican, and now they're in Texas, and he is saying that Jasmine Crockett has to go because she's not helping the community. His name is Sheldon Daniels. Listen to this.
It's called the President of the United States an enemy to this country. Why? Because he did what any strong leader would do. He demanded respect for the office and for the American people. So let's get one thing straight. President Trump didn't kick out Zelensky just to make a scene. He set a precedent. If you come to our house, our White House, you don't show up with demands. You show up with diplomacy. No more blank checks. No more begging. No more business as usual where American taxpayers foot the bill while foreign leaders call all the shots. The fact that Jasmine Crash Out Crockett is more offended by this than she is by billions of our tax dollars disappearing overseas tells you everything that you need to know about her priorities. She's not standing up for TX30. She's standing up for that same corrupt globalist agenda that's been draining this country and these people dry. If I were in Congress today, here's what I'd be focused on. Getting answers on where our money is going, demanding accountability, and making sure that American interests come first every single time. This is the time for nationalism. Jasmine would rather virtue signal on Twitter than actually do her job. She'd rather go on TV and talk than do her job. So no, our president is not an enemy to the country. The real threat is weak leadership, reckless spending, politicians that put foreign governments like Mexico, Canada, Ukraine ahead of the interest of the American people. TX30 deserves better. America deserves better. Let's bring some common sense to Washington in 2026. I'm Sheldon Daniels. I'm the candidate who's going to take Jasmine Crockett out of Congress and send her back to the beauty salon where she belongs.
Damn. And you know what's interesting? First of all, and really quick, I don't agree with him either, by the way. I don't support him either. But what's interesting about this? He's black. It's a black guy running against her. It's not a white candidate trying to take her out of that seat. It's a black candidate trying to take her out of that seat. Jasmine Crockett was another one that in the beginning, it just seemed like to me, she really did change. She really did change. And now he brought up something else because people are freaking out and they're saying, oh my God, this guy is trying to run against Jasmine Crockett. Da, da, da. I'm like, if she's doing as great as you guys say she is, you shouldn't be concerned at all. You shouldn't be concerned at all. But is she doing as great as people are saying she is? According to him, no. Look at this. He's saying that she received $16,000 in political contributions from an elderly retired couple. Now he goes to confront this couple and they're saying they had no idea what these charges were. Look, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys right now, this guy is serious. And for those joining, like, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I voted green, but this is serious. And if I was Jasmine Crockett, I'd be paying more attention to this than dancing down the hallways of Congress, getting those giant fake eyelashes or whatever else she do. I don't know why people got to put all this stuff on. I just don't know. But she was not that way. I'm trying to tell you guys, she definitely changed. And I'll show you the difference. He went and hunted these people down. Watch this.
All right, guys. So I'm about to go to Randy Best's house, introduce myself, and just ask them straight up if they contributed to Jasmine's campaign, if they contributed that amount, and why they like her so much, because I might be able to learn a little bit of something while I'm up here. I'm way up here in Collin County. I'm in Plano, Texas, very far from TX30. It's very peculiar that somebody up here would give that much money to a candidate in our district. Maybe they have a special connection to the district. Let's go find out. I'm not going to film them. I'm not going to put any faces or anything on there. I'm just going to have my camera down at the ground. I'm going to be standing in a public, area in open air. I'm just, recording what's going on around me. Let's see what happens.
Oh boy. And like, he was for real about it too. Was that a stop or a rollerway stop? That almost seemed like a rollerway stop, guys. I don't know if he came to a full stop at that stop sign.
Here's the house. Here's the house right here. Here we go.
But he's taking us with him.
How do you do, ma'am?
No soliciting.
I'm not here. I'm not a solicitor. I'm attorney Sheldon Daniels.
Okay.
Is there a Randy Best who lives here?
That's my husband.
Yeah. I just want to verify. Are you guys aware that you were charged over $16,000 last year? Yeah.
What?
I have a list of charges. I'm just here to verify that you guys know about this. $16,240 in political contributions to a candidate named Jasmine Crockett. Do you remember that at all? Not. Does your husband remember that at all?
I don't know. He's on the road on his way to Colorado.
Okay. It says here that he's not employed. Is he employed now?
No, we're retired.
Okay. I can leave this with you if you want. It's got your information on it.
Yeah, you can just leave it on the table.
Yes, ma'am. You mind if I take a picture?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Okay, guys, so I just drove by the home of this Randy Best guy. This guy, he's a 73-year-old retiree, unemployed. He and his wife, I guess they just travel around in an RV or something. I don't know. But he's on the road. His wife answered the door. She said that they had no idea what these charges were. And they had no idea that they were charged $16,000 or that they are responsible for $16,000 in political contributions to Jasmine Crockett.
So again, we're going to say allegedly on the show because they ain't coming for me. But if that is true, that's not good. And I would think you would notice that $16,000 was missing. I don't know. It's not like it's $16. It's $16,000. Like, I think you would notice if that was missing.
Yeah, she has them listed as political contributors. Now, mind you, I'm way up here in Plano. I'm in a totally different county. I'm in Collin County right now. The only reason why I'm even able to do this is because I practice law all over North Texas and I drive all over. So I know North Texas very well. Collin County, Dallas County, Tarrant County, Denton County, Grayson County. A lot of shady stuff going on with Jasmine Crockett. And I see why she was doing all this. Because she's trying to distract from the corruption. I wonder how deep it goes.
So he has announced that he is running against her, like Jasmine Crockett. He is also an attorney. I don't support either one of them, but he has announced that he's serious. He's running against her because he said that she's not actually helping the people or fighting for the people in the district. Now, I have told you guys before about the people that are selected for these positions, and Jasmine Crockett is no different. When we're talking about Black politicians, they typically tend to tap into the boule, right? So Kamala Harris was a part of that. We know that, well, I'm gonna show you Jasmine is a part of that. We know that Jim Clyburn was also a part of that. And as you can see here with Jasmine as well, she was a Delta Sigma Theta, right? So this is what I've been trying to tell you guys. A lot of the Black politicians that you see are particularly, we ain't talking about local ones, we're talking about the ones particularly in Congress, right? Or who may run for president. A lot of times they're all a part of that boule, the Divine Nine, etc. Now, this is not to shade anybody who's been a part of a Greek organization. That's not what this is about. What I'm trying to show you is they pick a certain type of Black person to be there. This is why someone like Cori Bush, remember Cori Bush had to run twice. She didn't win the first time. This is why someone like Cori Bush, what do they continue to say? Like, she wasn't supposed to be there. They didn't want her there. And it's all one big club. If you look at a lot of your judges, senators, right? We're talking about even federal judges, people that are pretty high up within the African-American community, they're all part of the Black boule. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they worked harder. This is not to say she didn't work hard, but it helps when you in that circle. Because I learned a long time ago, and I'll tell you, no one's just going to give you something just because you work hard. It's all about who you know and who you network with. and what societies you're a part of and what organizations that you're a part of. That's a big part of it. It's all one big game. And they tend to back each other. So as you can see, she's one of them too. Let's go ahead and go to part 2 for type B and C. Certain type of people that they're looking for. Now, why am I saying this? Because what you see from Jasmine Crockett, you see her behaving a certain way in that hearing towards MTG. You see her dancing down the hallways of Congress. You'll see her put on like this sister girl like act. And none of the other Black politicians in Congress are speaking that way to the public. That is an act. It's to convince you that, see, I'm down just like y'all, da da da. But she really not. I'm about to show you the class difference. Now I'm gonna take you back to the first time. This is before she was in Congress. This is when Jasmine came on to Jen Perlman's show. And then we're gonna fast forward and I'm gonna tell you why you don't see her on there now. So listen to this. This is when she first came on. At that point in time, she was a part of the Texas legislature. So she wasn't in Congress in DC yet. Listen.
We are going to welcome in the representative of the 100th district in the Lone Star State, Jasmine Crockett. Welcome to Generation Change.
Hi, guys. How are y'all?
Hi, it's so nice to meet you. I was just watching you on the show 2 days ago, and I texted him like, we got to get this girl. We got to get her on the show. And then I'm like, oh, she'll never respond. So then I called my friend Ina Minjarez.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm like, okay, I could probably get Ina to come on. But then I knew that you were sort of leading this thing. So, and then you responded. I was so excited. It's so nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. I apologize. We literally are just leaving a dinner with a congresswoman. And so I'm on a bus.
No, it's all good.
But I make sure I keep my headphones ready and my phone ready so that I can do whatever interviews I need to do. So thanks so much for doing this, you guys. It's really powerful to have the type of platform that you have and to use it for good instead of.
So doesn't this sound like a different person? Right. See? Yeah. That's what I told you. The stuff that you're seeing her do, like all this outlandish like behavior, the sister girl like act or whatever, that's an act. That's to get like attention, right? Now I'm going to fast forward. We're going to go to the more recent Jen Perlman appearance when I was on there. I want you to hear what she says about Jasmine Crockett today. So that other video, that was like from 3 years ago. Listen to what's happening now.
I remember when she was in this Texas legislature and led that walkout. And we actually had her on the show for doing that. She led a walkout of the Texas legislature so that they didn't have enough people to pass this anti-choice legislation. And it was a badass move. So I'm like, all right, cool. Let's get her on the show. You know, we had her on the show. And I found her so inspired, you know, from that. And then when she got into Congress, I felt like, I'm like, cool, like that's really cool.
And then she came on. Then she came on again when she was in Congress.
And again, she's been nice to me. She's been good to me, but it's been very disappointing to watch the trajectory from someone who led a walkout, you know, albeit on an issue that's easy to get behind. I mean, you know, but that was the issue. But that was pretty ballsy thing to do. They let down and risk getting, I mean, it was ballsy. So I don't know. I find her like very disappointing.
So you guys hear that? This is 3 years later. Now wait till you hear this part.
And much like Alex, it's the same thing. You know, I tried to reach out to Jasmine not too long ago and just kind of, you know, be like, hey, would you be willing to come back on the show?
Well, yeah. It always happens that way.
That's what happens because they cannot be confronted with the reality of what the problem is. The problem is our failed political and economic system. That's what it is. And they cannot be confronted with that because they immensely benefit from it. I mean, Jasmine is in a situation, just like Alex is in a situation, where if they simply play their cards right, they've got that seat for 30 years. Like, they don't have to do anything. They just kind of have to, you know, mug it up for the cameras, if you will. Kind of like how Senator Murphy, who was trying to see if he could find his lane in the progressive area, that didn't work out too well too quickly.
So Jen Perlman and Peter, they know this because Jen ran for office. Peter helped her with her campaign. They know how this works. So you saw that she was on the show 3 years ago And you fast forward now they say she won't come on. Because they know they're going to hold, and Jen will do that. Like Jen and Peter, they're going to try to hold you accountable, right? So what you're seeing from Jasmine, another one that changed, Savitha has a good point here. She pretends to be working class with her accent, right? That's the point I'm trying to get across to you, but she's not. And that's fine. You don't have to be that way. But I'm trying to tell you that front that she's putting on, that's intentional. That's on purpose. She don't talk that way. You just saw the way she was talking to Jen. Look, let's look at it, okay? Let's look at some stuff, all right? And you let me know if she like you. When we look at Jasmine's background, and I looked this up. She was born in St. Louis. She attended the Mary Institute in St. Louis Mary Institute in St. Louis Country Day School. So I already looked that up. That's a private school. It is what it is. That's a private school. Okay. So this is what I'm trying to show you guys. Okay. She went to Rhodes College. She was going to become an accountant, yada, yada. She graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration. She attended the University of Houston Law Center. Obviously, you guys know she became a lawyer. But the point that I'm trying to show you is even before she became a lawyer, she was at a private school. So even throughout K through 12, she was at a private school. What I'm trying to tell you is she came from money. So this whole sister girl act that you see her putting on, that's a front. It's not real. Sometimes people that look like us are selected to present themselves in a certain way to make you think they on the same, but they not on the same class level. Jasmine Crockett said so herself. She took a pay cut when she decided to take the congressional position, a pay cut. Now, from what I understand, they get a starting salary of what, $165,000 a year? If this sounds familiar to you, if the story kind of sounds familiar to you, it's probably because she might remind you a little bit of AOC. I was a bartender, right? My mom cleaned houses, leaving out a whole different part of the story that her dad was the president of the architecture firm that he worked at. She went to Boston University. I worked at BU. I know how expensive BU is. So all these other things that you don't want to add, you lived in Westchester County. It is not uncommon for there to be people that are not a part of that lower class, but they are a quote unquote minority. So they feel like the best way to get people, let me make it seem like I'm a part of that group, but I'm not. So there is a class difference, and that's no shade there. I'm not trying to say, oh, you should dislike her because of her class. What I'm trying to say is she's trying to pretend that she's something else. Took a pay cut when she went to Congress. So she was doing really well. And you can look up some more of the stuff for yourself about her. But Jasmine Crockett, I'm trying to tell people about this. You got to be very wary of the Jasmine Crockett's, the Hakeem Jeffries, right? The Richie Torres. Like you have to look into the background because like I said before, they put them in front of you and they say, this person is progressive. This person is champion of this. And I will say, I think it's great that she did sign that letter from Mahmoud Khalil. I think that's great. At the same time, she went on record publicly and told everybody that she supports Israel. So like I said, again, if you were a civil rights lawyer, how can you support the oppressor? Because that's what she's paid to do. These people like AOC and Jasmine Crockett, they're puppets and they are there as a distraction. They're there to make you think you now have someone in Congress that's going to fight for issues of your community. But they're not. They belong to Israel. Hakeem Jeffries belongs to Israel. I did a whole video telling you how he actually got that seat and who he screwed over to get it and who he was willing to sell out to get it. So we cannot be fooled by this. She hasn't even been there long. And right now, she already has a challenger. Already has a challenger who is, I guess, apparently looking to see where she got some of her campaign contributions from. So that's not good. Things are not always what they seem. You have to look into these things. Let's go to some of the comments in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, 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 hey. Thank you, Seal the Deal. Sounds like a plant to me. You go. Thank you, Perry. Crockett went to more prep schools than George Bush. There you go. There you go. I'm telling you. Joy, they give TikTok dances while other parties doing strategic legislation. Right. That's my point. Not getting anything done. Wired said, oh, shit, he's black. Dems are losing this seat. Well, I don't know. That area is a Democrat area. But I don't know. Who knows? Crazier things have happened. Lauren says Congress is a rodeo for Temu fashion shows. Damn. Shout out to Layden for gifting 5 Sabby memberships. Give Layden a big whoop, 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 whoop. Thank you, baby Ethernet. That's black gay lingo. Jasmine is just pandering. Oh, thank you, baby. I was told like never to call anybody that. Thank you, Kameshwari. Sacred Fire started noon today at totem poles in Stanley Park, Vancouver, British Columbia. Oh, yeah. I have to look into that. Hashtag Occupy Stanley Park this weekend. Maybe I can talk about that on Sunday. Shout out to Jerry, who just became a new member. What's up, Jerry? Give Jerry a big whoop, whoop. Thank you, Yala. Again, Summer Lee, speak up. She is the real deal, who represents 72% white working class district. She did speak. I did see Summer Lee said that the Democrats really need to stop talking about the billionaires the Republicans have when they have their own billionaires. I did see her speak up a little bit more. It's interesting, like who the media chooses to give attention to, because they don't give much attention to Summer Lee, but they give a lot of attention to Jasmine Crockett. You guys see what I'm saying? Think about that. Thank you, Ezekiel. The only place for news. Oh, well, thank you. That's so sweet. Well, damn. This story is going to be interesting. So, yeah. The theme is things are not what they seem. Now, if you have not heard, Bernie Sanders has been on this tour across the country. It is a Fight the Oligarchy tour. Now, Bernie has kind of done this before in the past, but this time I think he was really livid by the turnout of the 2024 presidential election and was just very vocal about that the Democratic Party needs to embrace a working class agenda. This tour in particular, though, he is attending these districts where, if I understand correctly, these are districts that Biden won in 2020, but Dems lost in 2024. So he's attending those districts to basically try to pull people back into the Democratic Party. That's really what this is about, because the oligarchy exists on both sides. So it says here that he's drawing huge crowds. Bernie Sanders emerges as the leader of the anti-Trump resistance. So he's still able to pull a crowd. Bernie Sanders is standing alone on the back of a pickup truck shouting into a bullhorn. So they said at this particular location in Detroit, a combined total of 9,000 people showed up for the rally. So Bernie is still able to get big crowds. I know, like when Bernie came to Boston, when I went to that rally, there was over 10,000 people at the Boston Common. So he's still able to do that. And he's being very vocal about the billionaire interest, billionaire money. And he says people need to fight back against that. Now, that's one side of the situation. He has now announced that AOC is going to be joining him. And I say this all to say that you're going to see a side of Bernie Sanders in this particular story that you may not have ever seen, and that many people online are calling out and they're not happy about it. But I feel that's actually who Bernie really is. And I think it was just a matter of time before more people started to see it. So now he says that AOC is going to be joining him along with them on this oligarchy tour. And I told you what this is really about, is to get people to come back into the Democratic Party. Listen.
Next week, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and I will be going to Colorado, Nevada, Arizona to hold town meetings with working people. Why are we doing that? We're doing that because I believe that all over this country, people are profoundly disgusted with what is going on here in Washington, D.C. They see our great nation moving toward an oligarchy where Elon Musk and other billionaires are running the government. They're seeing the Trump administration moving us toward an authoritarian form of society, usurping the constitutional responsibilities of the Congress, challenging the courts. They're seeing the Republicans in Congress proposing to give massive tax breaks to billionaires, cut back on the needs of our veterans, cut back on Social Security, cut back on Medicaid, cut back on education, so that the rich can become even richer. And let me just tell you this. We're going to win this thing not here in Washington, D.C. We're going to win it when millions of people, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, stand up and say, you know what, this is not the kind of government we want. So let us go forward together. Let's stand up. Let's fight back for a nation based on justice, not on greed. Let's go forward together. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So Bernie Sanders is now going to be joined by AOC to continue this oligarchy tour. It's hilarious. Both of them told you to vote for Kamala Harris, who happily took money from the oligarchy. Both of them told you to vote for Kamala Harris, who bragged about this on the debate stage, that she was endorsed by Goldman Sachs. So when they're talking about oligarchy, they're talking about oligarchy that's attached to the Republican Party. He's not calling out the oligarchy that's attached to the Democratic Party, because he's told you multiple times, 3 times now, to support those same people that support that oligarchy class. Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and then, of course, Kamala Harris. Why is this important? This is important because when you go on a little bit further here, when we go back to what was happening in Gaza, Bernie had limitations about what he wanted to say about it, right? Like, he was willing to say, a lot of people have died. We need a ceasefire. We need to stop doing this. But he was not willing to call it a genocide. And I'm pointing this out because Bernie Sanders has a tendency to only go but so far. This is why I want to just scream when people call him radical. Bernie isn't really radical. Bernie, if you look at the policies that he supports or whatever, these are similar to what some countries like Denmark have. That's not radical, where you have other countries in the world where everybody has healthcare, etc. And I have argued time and time again that Bernie Sanders exists to prevent a third party movement from happening. He's been asked to participate in this multiple times and said no. He said no at the beginning of his campaign against Hillary Clinton, that if he lost, he would support Hillary Clinton. That is from the words of Jesse Ventura. But I take you back here, and this is connected to the video of him losing his shit on his own, towards his own supporters. Listen to this, just a reminder.
In your view, is what Israel is doing in Gaza a genocide?
In my view, it is absolutely disgraceful, horrible, and I'm doing, as a United States Senator, everything I can to end it. And where I'm sitting is, and I don't know how many people know this, every year the United States provides about $3.5 billion in military aid to Israel. On top of that, there is a bill. I was supposed to be here earlier. couldn't come because a bill came up for not just all for Israel, $95 billion, including $14 billion for Israel. And I have led the opposition to that. I do not want to see the United States complicit in what Netanyahu and his right-wing lunatic friends are doing right now to the Palestinian people. So my job right now is to support what the United Nations is trying to do, have a humanitarian ceasefire, see if we can get the humanitarian aid immediately in there and work out, as complex and difficult as it is, some type of long-term solution to what's going on there.
But do you buy the South African case at the International Court of Justice that what Israel is doing in Gaza constitutes genocide or genocidal acts?
So this young woman is a journalist for Novara Media. I don't know if you guys follow them. They were really, really, really good on this particular issue. She had to ask him again. Listen to what he says.
I think, look, we can argue about definitions. It is horrible. Right now, 29,000 people have been killed, and some 70,000 have been injured. Some 65% of the housing units have been destroyed or damaged. And I am worried right now, and I almost wonder why I'm in the UK and not back in the US dealing with this stuff, is that we have hundreds of thousands of children are facing starvation. That's what I have to work on right now.
But if one agrees that it is a genocide, it means that other states have a legal right and duty to prevent genocidal acts being carried out.
But
do you see what she had to do? She's trying to walk him through it because he doesn't want to say genocide. And by the way, we have debunked those numbers multiple times on this show. The numbers were definitely underreported. The craziest thing is that when Trump was elected, he asked, I think this was an accident where he said, yeah, it's like only 1.5 million people left, which would mean that 500,000 people have been killed. That's what that would mean. And I told you those numbers weren't like correct. And they don't really want you to know the real numbers because then they would have to admit that, yes, what Israel was doing was ethnic cleansing, was a genocide. But she's trying to walk him through it. And look at how nervous he gets.
Can talk about that. But what does that mean? I mean, in real terms, right now, what I am trying to do is what I think is probably maybe, and I can do it because I'm a senator. You can't. Right now, maybe, if we tell Mr. Netanyahu that he's not getting a check for $10 billion more to continue his aggressive action, he and his right-wing friends may decide it is not a good idea to continue to do that. So,
pause. So I'm going to tell you about a time when I saw him do this before. This statement from Bernie when he says, well, what does that mean? Right? When she's like, well, with the genocide, well, we can talk about what these terms mean. What does that mean? You know when I heard him say that before? It was back when he was running for president 2020 and he was being interviewed by multiple people at that time. And they asked him if he supported reparations for American descendants of slavery. And Bernie Sanders said, well, what does that mean? Let me tell you what that does there. That, oh, I don't really know, so I can't really respond. Bullshit. That's a typical politician response when they don't really want to get into any type of hot water on one side or the other. When he tells you that, oh, what does that really mean? That's a way for him not to really answer that question. Bernie Sanders knows exactly what reparations is, right? I think eventually he did respond and say, no, he didn't support it, but he knew exactly what they were talking about. Bernie Sanders knows exactly what genocide means. So this is his way of trying. I don't know if they got something on Bernie Sanders. Like sometimes I feel like they have something on him. By they, I mean the alphabet letter agencies. Sometimes I feel like there is something over Bernie Sanders' head, whether it has to do with him, whether it has to do with his family or what. I feel like there is something that they must have on him because he'll go but so far. But once he gets to that finish line, he'll turn right back around and go in the opposite direction. I'll let him finish here.
That's where I am coming from.
In addition to stopping the billions of dollars in military aid that Israel gets from the United States every year, would you back calls for a cultural, sporting, and economic boycott of Israel?
I am nervous about economic boycotts of any country, to be honest with you. But right now, what people want to do, they can do what they want to do. But right now, again, my job as a United States Senator, and I'm kind of leading that effort in the Senate, is to tell Netanyahu that he is not going to get any more U.S. aid.
Did you feel nervous?
Okay. So, and it goes on a little bit more there, but I think you guys can see what Bernie was trying to do. Now, I showed you all of that because I want to get to this. This is what just recently happened. Bernie Sanders was approached by his own supporters about the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil. And I felt as though, and you can judge for yourself, that the way that they approached him was in a polite manner. They're not yelling at Bernie Sanders. They're not screaming at him. But I want you to see the way that he chooses to respond.
Hi, Bernie. Hi. Hey, we're really worried about Mahmoud Khalil out of Colombia.
Okay, excuse me.
Will you do? Will you do
Excuse
a
me.
statement? Thank you. Will you not? Will you put out a statement?
What did I just say? I've got to go to a rally now.
Excuse
me.
We're
just
walking with this you. Is really, really dire. This means
it's urgent.
They're coming after this student.
It was they illegally kidnapped him.
Hi, Bernie. Watch this again. Hey, we're really worried about Mahmoud Khalil out of.
Notice his behavior changes once they mention Mahmoud Khalil. At first, when they say, hi, Bernie, he's like, hi, watch this.
Hi, Bernie. Hi. Hey, we're really worried about Mahmoud Khalil out of Colombia.
Okay, excuse me.
You see this? He doesn't want to talk about it. It's not just, oh, I need to get to this rally. No, that's an excuse, a way to get away from you. He doesn't want to talk about Mahmoud Khalil. He doesn't want to call for the freeing of Mahmoud Khalil. This is what I was trying to tell you about how he only goes so far. I think about this, the people who signed that letter. Jasmine Crockett even signed that letter to free Mahmoud Khalil. But Bernie won't even talk about it. He don't even want to hear. Once he heard his name, I gotta go. Excuse me.
We're worried about Mahmoud Khalil out of Colombia.
Okay, excuse me.
Will you do? Will you do
Excuse
a
me.
statement? Thank you. Will you not? Will you put out a statement?
What did I just say? I've got to go to a rally now.
Excuse me.
That, in my opinion, that's who Bernie Sanders is. I think that's the real Bernie Sanders that you just saw right there. What did I just say? Now, in your opinion, were those protesters, were those, they're Bernie supporters, were they mean to him? Did they yell at him? Did they call Bernie a name? No. Why does Bernie have an attitude? Remember what I told you about not being nice to these politicians? They've had plenty of times to do what they're supposed to do, and they're supposed to work for you. Bernie doesn't take corporate money. So what's he running away from? What's the excuse? Why is he so nasty to them? What I tell you guys, these people, it's fake. It's so fake. Now, here's the statement right here that he said. No, Mr. President. It says Bernie puts this statement up 2 hours after this. No, Mr. President, you cannot illegally arrest and detain legal U.S. residents because of their political views or opinion. In America, we have a little something called First Amendment. Throwing protesters in jail is yet another step on the path to authoritarianism. But you know what I noticed even with that? Notice he won't mention Mahmoud Khalil's name. When you say protesters, that could apply to anybody. Mahmoud isn't the only one that's been detained. Other people have been arrested as well. So you see how he's trying to cover his ass? This is who people think was going to fight for them. Instead of treating us like that, he could have just said yes. Nasty attitude.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Will you put out a statement?
What did I just say? I've got to go to a rally now. Excuse me.
We're just walking with you.
This is really, really dire. This means
it's urgent.
They're coming after this student.
It was they illegally kidnapped him.
There goes your fighter, ladies and gentlemen, running away. Running away, very nasty for all these politicians that say, oh, you guys need to be nicer towards us. They were nice towards Bernie. Look how nasty he was towards them. It's not about being nice or not. Now, there is a recent video that just emerged of Mahmoud Khalil being taken by ICE. I want to show you guys this.
But you're going to be under arrest. So turn around.
Okay,
Stop
let's
resisting.
not.
Stop resisting.
Okay, he's not resisting. He's giving me his phone. Okay, he's not. I understand. He's not resisting.
Put your arm around. Don't worry about it. You're going to have to come with us. Don't worry about it. with you. Don't worry. No one's resisting. No one's getting worked up.
You guys really don't need to be doing all of that.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Come on.
حبيبي كيف بدي اتصل فيك؟
Take Amy. Call Amy.
Okay. Hi, Amy. Yeah, they just like handcuffed him and took him. I don't know what to do. Okay. And what should I do? I don't know. Nor.
Now, from what I understand, I believe she's 8 months pregnant.
Let me ask. Can we get a name, please? Of can we get your name? I understand the lawyer is asking for your name.
Go over there. No, we don't give our name.
The lawyer's asking for your name. He's saying they don't give their names.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We'll be taken to immigration custody at 26 Federal Plaza.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
We'll be taken to immigration custody at 26 Federal Plaza.
She said they're taking him to 26 Federal Plaza. Can you please specify what agency is taking him, please? Excuse me. They're not talking to me. I don't know. I don't know. Excuse me. The lawyer would like to speak to somebody. Oh my God, they're literally running away from me.
So yeah, that video has now been released, so you guys can see how the events took place. And that's important because at any given time, they'll try to say, oh, he resisted or he tried to fight or whatever. As you can see in that video, that was definitely not the case. So it's great that we have that video. They said they were taking him to Federal Plaza, but he ended up in Louisiana. That was the last time he was seen. Green card holder, permanent resident again. And that's who Bernie Sanders didn't really want to spend time talking about. I got to get to a rally. Got to get to a rally to tell people to go back into the Democratic Party. That's really what this is. So when people say that Bernie is sheepdogging people, that's what they mean. He's just keeping you in that same system that he is, so I guess he was supposedly fighting against, but he wasn't really fighting against it. If I tell you, like, don't support the billionaire class, fight back against that. And then after the DNC cheats me twice in a row, I say, oh, go ahead and vote for those people that support the billionaire class. Am I really trying to fight against it? No. I'm just recruiting more people for the Democratic Party. He's a recruiter. But I think what you saw in that video there, I think that's the real Bernie. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Clarissa. Girl, I love what you do. I'm a greenie and proud. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for the membership gift. You are welcome. Thank you, Yala. AOC is turn off for Middle USA. They never learn. EG says Bernie is a plant to keep the status quo. What I tell you? Mua says Bernie need to create the Socialist Party with the left, not the Democratic Party, which is centrist right, not left. Yeah, but Bernie made it very clear he's not going to do that. He doesn't want to create any other party. He's been asked about this multiple times. Thank you, Courtney. Believe Sabs, the vast majority, if not every one of your subscribers has suspicion that he had this side to him. This video just confirmed it. I hear you. And thank you, Dwayne. Bernie Sanders is a Zionist and Zionists are racist. Thank you for that. Let's go with the Rumble rant. And then we'll go to the next story. Thank you, Goo. Not worried sanctioning and boycotting Syria so that they are taken over by Al-Qaeda. Hopefully I'll bring on another guest to talk about the update in Syria as well. And thank you for this one. You should have Laith Marouf on your show. He has been on Garland Nixon from Free Palestine TV. He has interesting knowledge about Khalil. Ooh, I'll look into that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. We are moving on to our next story, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't done so, smash that like button. Thank you. And this one is a doozy, okay? We got to get into the news pundit clip here. Jesus Christ. If you have not heard about this, apparently there were protesters that stormed Trump Tower. Now, these protesters are a part of Jewish Voices for Peace. You have heard about them before. You've seen them participate in other protests as well. They literally have on t-shirts that tell you exactly who they are. Now, they have protested under the Biden administration, and now they're protesting under the Trump administration. They are calling for the release of Mahmoud Khalil, the student that we were telling you about that has the green card that was taken by ICE and apparently is in Louisiana somewhere. Let's get into that protest at Trump Tower, and then I'm going to show you how Harris Faulkner gets this incredibly wrong. Check it out.
Officials have arrested nearly 100 people after a crowd of protesters stormed the lobby of Trump Tower in New York City. They're demanding the release of Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian activist, a graduate student at at Columbia University. He is at risk of being deported after he helped lead protests against the war in Gaza at the university last year. Homeland Security officials have accused Khalil of being a Hamas sympathizer. Let's go right now outside live at Trump Tower with CNN's Omar Jimenez, who is on the scene. Omar, give us the latest.
Yeah, so Boris, about 100 people were arrested as part of this protest that took place inside Trump Tower behind me on multiple levels, 2 different levels of that main sort of lobby entrance to the tower here, as we understand from police. And they were protesting on behalf of Mahmoud Khalil. Jewish Voice for Peace was the group that was leading these particular protests that we saw. And when we first got to the scene, we saw dozens of protesters in zip ties being loaded onto buses, where they were taken to central booking, as we understand from New York police. But the chants that we heard from supporters that even gathered on the outside of some of these barriers that police put in place to keep crowds sort of at bay were things like "Fight Nazis, not students," and protesting on behalf, again, of Khalil, who is still being held in ICE custody as those legal proceedings play out as well. We spoke to one of the organizers of Jewish Voice for Peace about why they wanted to come out here. And to them, they said they did not want the First Amendment entrenched on, which is what they believe Khalil was doing over the course of leading some of the protests we saw out of Columbia University. But also they wanted to show solidarity from the Jewish people as well. As those were the words that one of the organizers told me as we spoke to her, as some of her protesters were being loaded onto these buses.
So there have been a number of times they participated in protests after October 7th, and I think almost everyone they were arrested. So they're used to this. But notice how many times he explains who they are. He says that they're Jewish Voices for Peace. You know, he said they wanted to give a perspective, you know, from the Jewish community, how they feel about the First Amendment, which obviously I keep telling people this is a First Amendment issue. And even if you don't agree with what Mahmoud Khalil did, it could be only a matter of time when it's something that you do agree with and it's, you know, that's attacked as well. So that's how I want people to really take a look at this. So again, he's telling you who this group is and why they are there. That's important when we get to Harris Faulkner.
No violent incidents in regards to the arrest themselves. Once they were taken into police custody, there did not seem to be any resistance. We did not hear of any resistance from police as well, but definitely a protest that grew to over 100, as we understand from both organizers and police, took place inside Trump Tower, organized in just a matter of hours and happened very quickly. As we understand from a law enforcement source, the protesters initially walked into the building with jackets on, and then when they undid their jackets, it revealed the red shirts that represented the Jewish Voice for Peace. But again, a protest that resulted in about 100 arrests, no serious charges expected outside of things like trespassing of that nature. But again, a moment where organizers tell us they wanted their voices to be heard in support of Mahmoud Khalil.
Omar Jimenez live for us in Manhattan. Thank you so much, Omar. Brianna?
Joining us now, CNN senior national security analyst Juliet Kayyem. So Juliet, over 120 people entering Trump Tower, a law enforcement official telling CNN at the height of this. Tell us a little bit about that security setup there now that it's not Trump's official residence.
So just remember, this is the national security advisor. Just keep that in mind, who she is, okay?
Yeah, so I'm surprised by this. I would have assumed that just given the public nature of Trump's commercial activities, it would be very difficult to have 100 people come. It was clearly a secretively planned protest, and they were arrested as they should be. They trespassed, but they were also nonviolent, and this country has a long tradition of nonviolent protest. We'll see what happens in the courtroom or what's decided about them. I have no doubt that there will be increased surveillance and security around Trump's commercial entities. And this is the interesting thing about Trump, without getting into whether he should or shouldn't do it. And we saw this with Elon Musk with the Teslas. Because they've broken down the distinction between their public roles and their private commercialization, monetization roles, you are seeing these protests touch them in their commercial space. We saw this with Elon Musk and attacks on Tesla, as well as now this protest. Donald Trump cannot close down Trump Tower. It's a commercial space. It's a residential space. And so they are sort of dealing with, I think, in some ways, the consequences of that merger of monetization and policy and the First Amendment.
So that's typically how protests work. Like it's not uncommon for the commercial space to be what's confronted. It was just really interesting here how she's trying to make this she's trying to make it seem like it's an outlier, as though this hasn't happened before in the past. And I'm going to show you an example of that as well, that you guys are very familiar with if you studied history in any way, shape, or form. But things aren't always what they seem, because when we go over to Harris Faulkner, I want you to hear how she describes the protesters. Now, you just saw all of that. Okay. They have on T-shirts that tell you exactly what organization they're part of. And listen to how she discusses these protesters. Check this out.
So you hear them chanting, "Free Mahmoud, free them all." I'm wondering, Ari, who are they all? And if the world is watching our nation right now, and they know us as a bastion of free speech, so on and so forth, when you hate, when people feel under threat because of what you're saying, that's actually not protected speech.
Check this out. So we have signs here. Again, this is right here. She's seeing exactly what we can see. Opposing fascism is a Jewish tradition, right? Look at the T-shirts. Not in our name, right? Okay, so Jewish Voices for Peace. Okay, so what Harris Faulkner is trying to do, and other commentators are trying to do this as well, is they're trying to say, oh, well, he said, free Palestine and free that. And I watched the videos. OK, he didn't say anything different than I heard a lot of other people say over years, not just after October 7th. OK, so now they're trying to say, and I warned you guys about this, that criticizing Israel, right, that's hateful or that's anti-Semitic. Thus, that means that it's hateful. Or saying that the Palestinian people should be free. Remember the whole from the river to the sea thing? Then but it was okay for Israel to say from the river to the sea, like all these types of things, right? So they're trying to say, well, then that's hate speech. So then that's not protected by the First Amendment. So you got to go. Keep in mind, it depends on who the country is, and it depends on the issue at hand. Because when it's Israel that you're opposing, oh, God, it's hateful. We got to crack this down. All this hate speech, right? But some of these same networks sat right there while there was hate speech and while there were killings towards Black people, hateful rhetoric that was used towards Black people, which they aired right on their shows. And they didn't want it condemned in this way, shape, or form. So I said this once again, if this is really about protecting people who are supposedly marginalized in this country, then that should be universal. It is not universal. It is mainly for Israel, because our politicians take money from the Israeli lobby, and thus that's really who they are working for. October 7th, after October 7th, has really showed people's ass. It really has. If you have this disdain and you have a problem and you think that that's hateful rhetoric, you say you have problems with this type of rhetoric, why don't you have that same type of energy and passion towards hate groups that we have right here in the United States that have hateful acts against people who are Black? Why don't you have that same type of energy against the KKK? Why don't you have that same type of energy against neo-Nazis in this country? Because that's not what it's really about. I have been trying to explain this to people over and over again. This whole idea of if you say something bad about Israel, well, then that's anti-Semitic. Everything is anti-Semitic now. That is an old trick that has been used over and over and over again. And people truly believe, they said, well, it says in the book and da da da. There's a lot of things that are written in the Bible that I don't see people stand up for, okay? A lot of things. It's really interesting how people can cherry pick what they want to pick to make it fit their agenda. This is why some people have a problem with religion. Listen to what else she goes on to say.
That's right.
And look at some of the signage in here. I mean, they hate Israel. They hate Jewish Americans. They are anti-American.
She said they hate Israel. They hate Jewish Americans. She does not even use a brain to realize that the protesters are Jewish Americans. Does she not even know what Jewish Voices for Peace are? She doesn't even know what she's talking about. These are the people that are sitting on corporate media, ladies and gentlemen. These are the people that they tell you are supposed to be news. I have told you time and time again, these people are not journalists. They just sit there and read a teleprompter in front of them or the papers that are handed to them in the morning. They ain't doing no damn research. I don't never see these people get out of the studio and go talk to the people in the street. They run away from those people as they sit up in their high penthouse apartments in Manhattan. These people are out of touch. They've been out of touch, but they like to take a check. And that's how they get that job. And that's how they get to sit there. How do you not know this? How can you be this dumb? Now she's telling people that they're not Jewish Americans.
I'll make 2 big points here. One, I'm going to start with the speech facade, the myth that this is about speech. What happened to Mahmoud Khalil had nothing to do with speech. It has everything to do with creating an encampment that is where Zionists are prohibited, where Jewish students are not allowed to walk on their own campus. These are crimes. These are deportable events. These are things that we would never tolerate. As for all
that was not what happened. And anybody who went there to Columbia University, like Status Quo went there, Cornell West went there, they did not tell them that they could not walk on campus. Do you see how the lies that are spreading by mainstream media? This is why people have stopped watching mainstream media. This is why people have walked away. You guys just spread lie after lie and so much propaganda. I am challenging the American people to walk away from the lies, to walk away from the propaganda, and to focus more on independent media. These people, they are basically aligning with the State Department. They are aligning with the alphabet letter agencies. They want you to believe the propaganda that the government wants you to believe. I am challenging all of you to open your mind and to do your own research. I'm sorry, it's hard to get through this.
these people who are now in Trump Tower, I hope that this administration will do what the Biden administration did to the January 6 people who walked inside the Capitol. They have the technology, get their faces, match it up with the database, and if any of them are non-citizens, every one of them is trespassing. They all should be deported from this country, too.
But wouldn't they be trespassing anyway if they are causing people to fear?
Listen to this. He said they all should be deported. They're Jewish. They're American. They're all Jewish Americans. Does he not realize that? So everybody mark this moment. This is Fox News calling for the deportation of Jewish Americans. Now, I noticed something. You don't see the ADL trying to jump in and push back against that, do you? No, because the ADL don't like them either because they don't support the Zionist agenda. Think about that.
There are people who pay to live in that residence. There are businesses on that floor of the lobby. This is not a safe situation. If you are Jewish in that building, do you feel safe? And read those signs. Fight Nazis, not students. So does that make the rest of us in America Nazis? What are they even doing right now?
Harris Faulkner, honey, you are delusional as hell. Delusional as hell. And you can see it here as well. Again, she doesn't even realize these are American citizens.
I refuse to believe they're all students. They're coming from, wherever they're coming from with
Nobody said, none of these people said that they were students. You see this? I refuse to believe they're all students. Jewish Voices for Peace as an organization is not just students. They don't do no research. These people are not journalists.
Refuse to believe they're all students. They're coming from, wherever they're coming from with pre-printed T-shirts. There's some money behind this, Lisa, and there's no doubt about that because we've lived through this before. So this is what open borders potentially can bring you. I can't believe everybody's here on a student visa and or a green card in the crowd, or that they're all American citizens. I think we have to find that out. And where it is applicable, as Ari has said, get them out.
So you heard it here, folks. You heard it here first. Here is Harris Faulkner calling for Jewish Americans for you to get them out of the country. She's saying, get them out. She said, this is what happens with open borders. Really? It gives us Americans who were already here? They came in with pre-printed T-shirts. That's how organizing works. I mean, I'm sure when you go to a concert, don't you have the opportunity to buy pre-printed T-shirts? There's some money behind this, you guys. It's an organization. There's a lot of money behind you. It's embarrassing. That clip on X that has just been going around, people are like, oh my God, is she really this dumb? And I want to take you back to a time because, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to show you something, okay? Check this out. This is from the History Channel, so I probably can't play it. But look at this. Reflections on the Greensboro lunch counter. You know what's happening here? This is a sit-in during the Civil Rights Movement, right? So all these guys, they're sitting in here at a diner, and they said, we're not going to move unless you serve us. Why am I showing you this? Because a lot of things that people are pointing their fingers about, the way that people are talking about protesters today, peaceful protesters today. I just want you to remember some of those same people applaud all the protests that happened during the Civil Rights Movement. Not during that time. During that time, the Civil Rights Movement was not popular. But later on, people begin to say, oh, MLK had a point. We look back at what happened during the Civil Rights Movement, and this helped Black people in this country. There's still a lot of work to be done, but it led the pathway there. And I just wanted to show you this image because how quickly people forget. People forget that Black people that were sitting in diners, sit-ins, boycotts, which Bernie don't really want to mention, like this type of thing, boycotts, protest, disrupting businesses. This was a commercial space. This was disruption. And yet they show this to you through history class all throughout the years of school. And this is how Black people fought for civil rights in this country. And you see people right now occupying spaces for Gaza, for what happened to Mahmoud, and also because of the genocide in Gaza. And they're saying like, this is ridiculous. This is terrible. They're traitors. They don't like it here. They need to get out of the country. So it's always good to go back and revisit history. Because I sat up there and I watched cops drag and punch and kick peaceful protesters who weren't doing anything but just standing there or just sitting there. Have we really come far in this country as far as we think that we have? And of course, you go back to the people who are the elites, and you go back to the mouthpieces, that is corporate media, who keep us in this type of division. Because when I say that things are not what they seem, don't forget that your information, it comes from corporate media, most of it. They control the narrative. And as long as they have a handle on the narrative, they can have a way of controlling the masses. They can have a way on controlling you. Because if they convince you that nothing like this has ever happened before, and you don't do your own research, it's easy to believe it. So people say we're going forward in this country. This is why I say, no, we're going backwards. Imagine what they would say if these types of protests, the civil rights protests, were happening today. I want you to think about that. When you hear about the way they talk about the people protesting for Mahmoud or for Gaza, I want you to think about that. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Muha says, well, maybe others on the left will create the Socialist Party. Well, there is PSL. There's the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Claudia de la Cruz ran with them for president. I'm not sure if you ever looked into them, but there's that party. Thank you, Feral Unicorn, who's been a member for 10 months. If they come for me in the morning, they will come for you in the night. Angela Davis. Huey said CNN is only saying who Jewish Voices for Peace are because Trump is president. That's right. They didn't want to say it under Biden. Shout out to Crazy Puppet for gifting 50 Sabby memberships. Holy smokes, Crazy Puppet. Thank you so much. And congrats to everyone who received those 50 memberships. And I'll get the comment on Rumble and we'll go to our last story. Gotta feel like somebody's watching me. Thank you, Goo. Laith Maroff can also keep you up to date with Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria. That juicy thing regarding Khalil, he worked with the UK to help overthrow Assad. Now, like Linsky, is being thrown under, or I think you mean under the bus. Interesting. Okay, I have to watch that one, that episode of Garland. Then when he did protests, he crossed the line of the establishment, then are using him as an example, or they are using him as an example. Okay. Keep in mind who owns Fox. Piers Morgan, good buddy and supporter of B.B. Rupert Murdoch. All right. And thank you, Juana. The MSM, just like politicians, be like, we're all for free speech as long as it's speech that we approve of. They're all such hypocrites. Yeah, I could see that. Okay, we have our final story, ladies and gentlemen. Again, the theme is things are not what they seem. So I really like, this is an interesting discussion here between Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty. They were talking about Gavin Newsom's turn in the Democratic Party. Like Gavin Newsom had an interview, I guess, with Steve Bannon. I don't know what's going on with Gavin. He got all over the place. I guess he's trying to figure out what he's going to do next. But the topic comes up about progressive policies and if it's really going to lead the Democratic Party or if that's really the way to go. Or where does the rest of the country actually feel? And I found this pretty interesting. And I want to hear what you guys think, because I kind of agree with both of them a little bit here. We'll see. Let's bring in this clip here. Again, Crystal and Sagar debate. It's the Gavin Newsom issue, but they're talking about where the Democratic Party is headed.
But I was fearful that a Gavin Newsom, who is very rhetorically skilled, who was very effective in that debate against Ron DeSantis. I think even conservatives had to admit, like, I handled himself pretty well there. If he had these people on and he fought with them, I think he would be unstoppable in 2028. And I'm actually glad in a sense that he's approaching it this way. And what I attribute it to, Sagar, is I think he's in these Silicon Valley donor circles where they're jealous of the right. You know, it's the same people like Hakeem Jeffries was talking to. And they want the more like conciliatory, capitulate, like make nice. That's the approach that they want. There is a big divide between that like donor base of the Democratic Party, especially the Silicon Valley donor base of the Democratic Party, and where the Democratic base is and what they want to see. And I can promise you, he is misreading the moment for the Democratic base in order to win a Democratic primary, like in an unbelievable way. So if you think about like the viewers of Brian Tyler Cohen, if you think about the Midas Touch brothers, like they in particular have been disgusted with him. Their viewers are disgusted with him, and that's where the energy in the party is right now.
I just don't want to overread it.
Let me just pause here. I just want to add, Brian Tyler Cohen is also one of those influencers that was also paid by, one of those influencer brand companies. We talked about this before on the show. Like, so he is a paid influencer. Like, and I don't just mean like, oh, he has a YouTube channel and he does well with that. Like, no, he's a paid influencer. And there was a company, I shared it before on the show, where it was a part of the Democratic Party. This company in particular, they had paid influencers. And one of the paid influencers was that guy, Too Raw, Too Real, who was yelling at everybody on Twitter. So that was kind of revealed that these people were paid. So just keep that in mind. Like, when you say these people are blowing up, you also have to look into what's the marketing behind it, right? Like, who's pushing them, who's that type of thing. So just keep that in mind. He is one of those paid influencers. Let's continue.
You're
because
right.
Who's got better political judgment, the left or people like Gavin Newsom?
That's my point. Is this isn't the left?
No,
and that's what I think Gavin Newsom is reading it as well, because he thinks, oh, these are just like the Bernie people. They're always mad about everything. Whatever, shut up, right? You people voted for Joe Biden last time around. But the difference is, and this is what I think the Democratic Party is not understanding and is really failing on, is that it's not just the left. Telling you, it's the indivisible groups. It's the core, like the people who went to the Women's March. It is the core Democrat. You go to your average Democratic County Party meeting and it's flooded with regular normie Democrat voters. Like, the median voter in the party is disgusted with party leadership for not putting up enough of a fight. And I think that's where they are profoundly misreading their own voters, because they think that it's still just like, oh, the Bernie people. No, this is your MSNBC watcher. These are the people who have flooded to Midas Touch, the people that have flooded to Brian Tyler Cohen, your normie resistance Democrat that thinks that Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries need to resign yesterday, that are thoroughly disgusted with the patty cakes with Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon and Michael Savage and whatever, and are really looking for something different than what the Democratic leadership are providing.
So let me pause here for a second. So yeah, there is some of that energy that is happening where people are like, I've heard it from all sides, where even some of the ones who did vote for Kamala Harris and they consider themselves to be Democrat Party loyalists are they're looking at things and they're like, why is the Democratic Party not fighting back harder against Donald Trump? They've had some criticisms against Chuck Schumer and also Hakeem Jeffries. However, from my experience and what I've been seeing is those people are not going to say, okay, I'm not going to support the Democratic Party. I'm not going to vote for them. Those people, especially those party loyalists and the people that she was referring to that attended like the women's marches, those people are still voting for the Democratic Party though. And this is the question I have, like when Sagar brings in this part here about the Bernie element, like the progressive, like policies or whatever, the reason why we haven't received real change for the working class is because the majority of people are not willing to hold the line. The majority of voters are not willing to hold the line. And I do feel like you have to show that in numbers. Now, outside of the two-party system, you can do that via third party, or you can do that in the streets, organizing, mobilizing, et cetera. That's another way that can be done. But I think that those Women March participants, they still show up to vote for the Democratic Party. Now, listen to this part right here.
Right now,
maybe, it's certainly possible. I'm not ready to count Gavin out yet. I mean,
I wouldn't count him out.
You don't become governor of the biggest state in the country.
He is hurting himself. He is hurting himself right now.
I'm just not ready. I don't know. I mean, part of the reason, I'll just explain this because this is difficult. And there's a lot of data necessarily to back you up. But every online Democratic freakout and or vibe trend that I've seen from the liberals has never really worked out. And in general, you'd be probably better off over the last 5 years betting against anything that AOC and Bernie and all of them are fighting on than being on the side of them. So if you look at the social trends, if you look at from, wokeism to BLM to I could go on forever. Defending Biden, which a lot of them did, pro-Kamala, vibe shift, Brad Summer, Tim Walz, none of these bets have worked out. So I just am skeptical that this time their grand political judgment is there, as opposed to the great survivors like Schumer and Gavin Newsom. In the interim, you might be correct, but their political judgment and track record is bad, especially in the back, from the last 5 to 7 years
You think Gavin
of overall
Newsom's political judgment?
I mean, he survived recall. He survived recall.
In
He's got a high enough approval rating. Listen, I don't know how they put up with him over there, but they're the people who don't, they just left. I guess they moved to Florida, but they like him. I don't really get it. I'm not making a judgment about myself. I'm looking purely at the guy's metrics. He seems to be doing fine. He's got a decent approval rating with a lot of Democrats. So my only point is just, I'm skeptical that we're once again trying to see some wish cast of, what progressives and liberals have a very good way of shaping a narrative through media and through, Twitter and et cetera, into believing things are way more popular than they actually are. And
is that true? This is the question I wanted to ask you guys. Is what Sagar said they're true? Do we believe that something may be more popular than it actually is because it's popular on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, but that's the online base and maybe it's not necessarily as popular in person? Is that true? A friend of mine, we had this little short debate about if Bernie would have won, right? And she said to me that Bernie Sanders, even if the DNC didn't cheat Bernie Sanders, that Bernie Sanders still wouldn't win because he can't win the black vote. And my pushback to that was, well, I think if Jim Clyburn would have endorsed Bernie Sanders instead of Joe Biden, then it probably would have been Bernie Sanders who won South Carolina. Maybe. I don't know. People were listening to what Clyburn said. I also lived in South Carolina, and I can tell you that South Carolina has the oldest electorate. So that's who Bernie would have had to win over. But she vehemently believes that even if that happened, that Bernie Sanders was not going to be able to capture enough of the black vote to win. When I went to those rallies back then, again, thousands of people, big crowds, same thing you kind of see now. Actually, crowds were a little bit bigger back then. Bigger crowds with Bernie and all that kind of stuff. He had a great turnout. And I saw this in person, on the ground. But I think we have to start asking the question, does that transfer into votes? And that's what I'm starting to wonder. Could it be that these policies are very popular, people support universal health care and they support free pre-K, et cetera. And could be that all those people that went to those rallies, really believed what Bernie was saying, yay. But I have to ask myself, the 10,000 people that came to Bernie's rally in Boston Common, did they show up to vote in the Dem primary? Is the popularity for these policies making it to the polls? Is it making it to the voter box? And I think we need to ask this question because that would explain some things. Let's continue.
No electoral evidence to back any of that up.
Who do you think is going to be voting in a Democratic
I have no
primary?
idea. Listen, I don't know.
In a Democratic primary, that you have to appeal to
okay,
liberals.
But by that standard, then Bernie would have won in the 2020
No, because liberals were not behind him, Sagar. That's what you're missing, and that's what he's missing. Is I'm not talking about the Bernie Sanders voter. Yes, they're pissed off. Whatever. They're going to be both. They're going to be looking at it from an ideological valence. No, I'm talking about your standard normie Democrat, the base of the party. And that is what is so different. I mean, that's why these channels are blowing up massively.
Yeah, but how do we know that's not young,
energy.
disaffected people who are barely not going to vote anyway? I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I have no idea what the 65-year-old boomer out there and how they're exactly taking.
But this is another good point. And I think, and this is why I said, I think they're both making good points here. But what Sagar just said is he was okay, yeah, those channels are blowing up, but that doesn't mean that those people are going to go out and vote. See, that's the thing. Just because someone's watching doesn't mean that's going to transfer into votes at the ballot box. There were a lot of people that were watching the pro-Bernie channels. I was one of them during the Bernie campaigns. But it didn't transfer over to votes in the primary in 2020. 2016, he was totally robbed. I hear you on that one. totally robbed, where they took states from him that he won and gave them to Hillary Clinton. But in 2020, it did transfer over to the ballot box. Even here in Massachusetts, I saw way more Bernie signs. I didn't see any Biden signs in the Boston area, in Massachusetts. But Biden handsomely, was able to win here in Massachusetts, because I think a lot of people here who have money, and we have a lot of millionaires here in the state, wanted to keep the status quo. So they were like, oh, we're just going to vote for Biden. We don't want this socialism stuff or whatever, that kind of thing. So that's the thing, like, because more people are flocking to like the Brian Tyler Cohen or whatever, and they're growing. Like I said, they were part of the paid influencer thing. So they have marketing that a lot of us don't have. Does that necessarily mean that those people are going to be willing to come out and vote for a candidate that has those progressive policies? And that's what I'm asking, folks. Because just because there's energy online, that doesn't mean that it's going to make it to the ballot box.
Do you put no stock in the fact that, listen, I know polls can be off, blah, 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 but the Democratic leadership being underwater with the Democratic base, 49% disapproval to 40% approval, that's so different, wildly different.
I put some stock in it.
And that is, your normie Democrat voter. Like, they are flooding these offices with calls. They are enraged by the capitulation from Joe Amica and MSNBC and the Washington Post and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. Like, that is a very different dynamic than we have seen before. And so my contention here is simply that Gavin Newsom has an opportunity to make himself invincible in 2028, because I do think he has a lot of the things going for him that he's got plenty of money behind him. He's a smooth operator, all that stuff. But rather than making himself invincible, because if he came out as this like fighter in this moment, I think he would be very difficult to beat in 2028. Instead, I think that he is positioning himself in a way that hobbles him with the Democratic base. And I feel really confident about that. Now, is that a guarantee? No, of course not. But is he doing damage to himself when he had an opportunity to sort of make himself an unstoppable force? Yeah, I do think so.
Maybe.
I don't think it matters if he really does damage to himself. He's related to Nancy Pelosi by marriage. They know how to make it work if they want to make it work. You know what I'm saying? You guys know what I'm talking about? Like, if they want to make it work so that he is the nominee, they will find a way to make it work so that he is the nominee. That's what people have to follow, is the money. Gavin Newsom, yeah, he in that club. We talking about a political dynasty here. Don't forget, Nancy Pelosi's father was also a politician in Baltimore. So put all of this together. He got the money and the resources to make it work if he wants to make it work. I do know people are really heavily criticizing this interview that he had with Steve Bannon. They're like, why are you sitting down with Steve Bannon? What are you doing? Yada, yada. And it's just, I don't really care who Gavin Newsom chooses to talk to. But I think that there tends to be a lot of hype around that type of candidate because they are well known and because of the connections that they do have, even though, there was a recall against him, which he managed to beat.
I don't know. I'm not ready to make the judgment call yet. I just don't trust the political judgment of a lot of the folks who I see at the helm right now. They've just had a terrible track record. And by the way, 40% approval is still higher than a lot of Republicans feel about their leadership. And those people survive all the time and they continue to win elections. So I'm not saying they aren't necessarily different, but you could go much lower. And I still think that things could be, I just don't think things will necessarily manifest in the same way. Will he be invincible? He's making different bets in terms of how he sees the coalition. Like, maybe there's also something to be said about somebody who wants to run for president as opposed to somebody who just needs a bunch of libs to show up in a low turnout midterm situation. That actually is qualitatively different for the overall base. I don't know, who exactly or what is correct. I always just think it's important to put that caution out there. Like, look at the political track record of these people, and it's terrible. It's not one that has worked out at the ballot box. And so with that, you should think about that in the future. They could be correct this time, but they just don't have enough they don't have enough going for them in the past for me to make any like real trust in their overall political judgment. I think it's definitely working to raise money online to get a bunch of liberals who already hate Trump, excited. Sure, that's not hard actually though. What's actually hard is to win an election, which they've been completely unable to do.
We'll put a pin in it.
Yeah.
But again, I think you're focusing on like AOC and Bernie, and that's not actually what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the mainstream of the party, which you definitionally need in order to win a Democratic primary.
Sure, but then there's no mainstream elector or elected official who has access to probably more privileged data than you or I that is acting in the way that you're describing, which is what makes me a little bit skeptical that any of this is real. I mean, there are a lot of political entrepreneurs. These are the most opportunist pieces of egotistical people in the world.
To open up a whole other can of worms. But Tim Walz is moving in more of the direction where he's going out and doing town halls, following and sort of like the Bernie model in Republican red districts. So, I mean, this is the other thing. It's like the Newsom approach is also a very elitist approach versus the let me go out and not talk to like Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon. Let me go out and talk to voters in these places that, that we've lost and that we need to win back, and in swing districts and in red parts of the country. And, I also think that that is a much better approach, going to the grassroots and talking to regular people about what's going on for them versus talking to, making nice with the right-wing influencer.
But that's kind of my point.
But I think the thing that I wanted to just mention here is that it is really interesting to me that Tim Walz was willing to say that he accepts the blame for the loss. And he said, we didn't run a good campaign. I don't see Kamala anywhere, but Tim Walz is going out there and he is talking to the voters and talking to people. And we really don't know where Kamala is. Like, have you guys noticed that? Like, Kamala's not there, like nowhere to be found, but he's facing the people. Whereas Gavin Newsom is doing a podcast and he is talking to people like Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon. Maybe Gavin Newsom does not want to run in 2028. Maybe he just wants to have a podcast. Maybe he wants to go into Hollywood or something. I don't know. But maybe he may not run in 2028. Maybe not. Maybe Gavin Newsom kind of wanted this round to be his go, the 2024 round. I don't know.
Is that what we're trusting the political judgment of one of the only two Democrats in the world to lose a popular vote election in 20 years? Like, I don't trust that person, to look at their overall political judgment. I'm just saying, whenever you look at somebody like him, it's like, what you're going to put up? Do we really want to point to who's the guy who lost in 92? Dan Quayle?
You're going to trust the political judgment of the dude who almost got recalled in California, a Democrat who almost got recalled in California.
I wish he almost got recalled. He blew it out.
The fact they even made it to that point, though, is crazy.
Yeah, so that's an interesting conversation there. And I think that's something we all need to talk a little bit more about. Maybe, I don't know, I can have a separate show about this. We really need to start thinking about this. What we see online, does that transfer into votes? And that's all I'm asking. It's just a legitimate question, because I even said this, like, even with Jill Stein's campaign, there was a lot of energy online, but when it came time to vote, a lot of people stayed home, right? There were people who told me on the call-in program that they wanted to go out and vote green, but they felt like they would be guilt-tripped if they did. And I don't get that either. It's like, nobody's with you in the voting booth, but whatever. But ultimately, a lot of people stayed home. And so that's what I'm saying. Is that online energy, does it transfer into votes? And I think we need to start asking those questions and start thinking about those things. That's why I say things aren't always what they seem. I saw like all the energy and popularity that Bernie Sanders had, which is why I was kind of surprised he didn't get more votes than he did in the primary. Like, I really thought, like, going into Super Tuesday, especially how he in Nevada and New Hampshire and all that kind of stuff, he blew away there. So I was like, okay, yeah, going to Super Tuesday, he's going to do really well. And he didn't do as well as I thought. So again, something to think about. All right, let's go to the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Isaac said it translated accurately for Kamala. Well, she had a lot of energy online, but that didn't happen at the ballot box, not according to the numbers. But I see what you're saying here. Want to see more, says 3 million for third parties. We are making moves. Yeah, I definitely want to see more third party votes. Let's go to the super chats here. Thank you, Crazy Puppet. Is it just in human nature to go for benefits? I feel like those are easier to see. As for ideological allegiance, that's just a facade. Money talks. Sorry, this thing fell up. Money talks, no pun intended. Thank you for this as well. VP Vance got called a B during his show of direct verbal confrontation due to lack of Zelensky's respect for the procedures. Slap was nice fiasco. Status quo is already back to the prior of the fiasco. Interesting. Miss Kiwi says progressives don't win because Democrats, Republicans, J Street, and AIPAC form like Voltron to keep the American people or progressives from winning. That's a good point. American says if Democrats would have gotten behind Bernie, Bernie would have gotten those Democratic votes. Thank you, Kenman. Sagar is the ultimate Oreo. Okay. It's about, thank you, the Feral Unicorn. Very few people here in California like Newsom. There just hasn't been a viable alternative. I'm hoping Butch Ware gains traction. Interesting. So Gavin Newsom isn't as liked as people might think. Thank you for this one, Kenman. Sagar is the ultimate coconut. All right. Bert says, you ain't lying there. Throughout history, liberals have picked fascism over socialism every time. There you go. Thank you, Cool Blue. I recognize it's necessary to make sure to not vote for the Dem party no matter what. It is not just the Dems PTB. It is also their loyal voters. Thanks, Better You. Tinfoil hat on. Bernie wouldn't have won, not because his policies don't attract voters, but because I don't believe America would be allowed to go left. Interesting. Thanks, Crazy Puppet. Mr. Burnout failed in a couple of topics of Leninism. Oh, did have a good following with younger generation in his zenith. But yeah, he has some crazy views on classes, hybrid of socialism and fascism. Also, unfortunately, the youth vote wasn't a great turnout like it was in 2016. Thank you, Miss Ritchie. My shitlib dad and stepmom voted against Bernie in the primaries because communism has never worked and Hillary stands with Israel. I'm sorry, Miss Ritchie. I'm so sorry, Miss Ritchie. Thanks, sir. Bikes a lot. It seems like Newsom is Jeb Bush all over again. Please clap. Peter, yes, he could get the nomination like HRC did, but he will not beat Vance or Musk. Thank you, the Crazy Puppet, who's been a member for 9 months. He was trying to create a new term because that's all he has left to achieve to be relevant after his passing. The term, Bernism. His name got him. Sunshine. Sabby, you do look especially nice tonight. The turquoise earrings, there's power in turquoise. You know what? The lady who gave these to me, I've had these for like, when did I move here? Yeah, I've had these for like 15 years. And the woman who gave them to me, it was a coworker. She was indigenous, and she said, take these with you to Boston. I kid you not. She said, take these with you to Boston, right? So I've had these for so long. Jeez. But thanks. I didn't know that. And thank you, the Crazy Puppet. WTF, Bernie sold out during his self-established peak. Burnout has no bottom line. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's get the comment on Rockfin and we'll be heading on out of here. Roll out. Roll out. Roll out. Thank you, Roger. Customers got in car. Sabs said 4 words and they were hooked and said, who is this? I said, I got you. Another subscriber, Sabs. Oh, that is so sweet, Roger. I guess it's a good thing I wasn't like, saying any profanity tonight. You never know who would hop in there or whatever. But yeah, someone gave me these and I've had these for years, man, for years. And it's interesting. Like I don't know. I do feel like the quality of goods is not like as great as it used to be, because I feel like if I get like the little studs I like to wear, I feel like they don't last long. Like I could get the little pearl stud like earrings, and I feel like a couple of months later they're just like, I don't know, like the little post will bend on its own. I'm not doing these things. Like the post will bend on its own, or like the ball will fall off. I don't know, but I've had these forever and nothing has fallen off. So yeah. Anyway, you guys don't want to hear about all that. That is it for me tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I will be live Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Join me then. I hope you guys do have a great weekend. If it's cold where you're at, eat some soup and wear a hat. If it's hot, don't act like a thought. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.